talking to us and our students. We are really, really grateful to both of you. Thank you. Uh, Before starting off, I would request Dr. Daljit Kaur, our CIC, teacher in charge for our department, Mata Sundari College, to say a few words to begin the webinar. Ma'am.
Yeah. So, am I visible? Panchali?
Oh,
Yes,
ma'am.
ma'am.
No, ma'am.
Yes,
Not.
ma'am.
Yeah. Yeah. So, very good morning to all of you. That's on the second day of the webinar. I extend my warm welcome to all the dignitaries here and my special guest, Dr. S.P. Singh, and my dear Dr. Kalyani. On behalf of my department, Department of History, Mata Sundari College, and Principal Professor Harpreet Kaur, I extend warm welcome to all of you and looking forward for the very insightful that will be and the interactive session today morning. Once again, very warm welcome from you for you. And I think ma'am will be joining very soon. She was in a meeting, so she'll be joining soon. So once again, we can start with the second technical session. Over to you, Panchali. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you once again and welcome to all of you. Now, sir, with your permission, I would like to introduce you your prolific profile. I feel really, today morning when I was going through your profile, it was really, really prolific. And I'm really sorry, I'm apologizing beforehand if I miss out on any of your achievements while introducing you. But I will try and do justice to your very, very illustrious career. So the first speaker for today's technical session is Dr. S.P. Singh. And he has been a very important figure in the field of conservation, and he is a very, very known figure amongst the academic circles in the National Museum, the National Archives. He has done very, very important work in this field. He has graduated from St. Stephen's College, New Delhi, uh, and then he has gone on to complete his postgraduate degree in chemistry from the Indian Institute of Delhi in 1971. He has further underwent UNESCO training for almost about 9 months in conservation of antiquities from National Museum, New Delhi. Then he has gone on to serve in various senior positions in the National Museum, the National Archives of India, and the Archaeological Survey of India in the field of conservation of art, objects, and monuments for almost about 38 years. After an illustrious career, he has retired as Director Conservation from National Museum, New Delhi in 2010. He is currently serving as a teaching faculty at the National Museum Institute, New Delhi, Institute of Heritage Management, New Delhi, and also in the Institute of Archaeology, New Delhi. He is the chairman of the Kasturba Gandhi Museum and Mahadev Desai Library, Harijan Sevak Sangh, Delhi. He is also serving as the advisor and technical consultant to Shiromani Gurudwara Prabandhak Committee and the Golden Temple Amritsar, Punjab. He is currently working on conservation of very rare holy granths of Sikh history at Sri Akal Takht Sahib Golden Temple, Amritsar. Apart from various publications in national and international journals, Sir has 3 published books to his credit, namely Conservation of Cultural Property in India, Studies in Art and Archaeological Conservation, Ajanta Paintings, Their Composition Technique, Deterioration and Preservation. Sir has also been honored with the Lifetime Achievement Award for contribution in conservation by Museum Association of India in 2013. He has also been awarded various certificates of honor, special certificates of honor by Home Secretary Government of India for setting up 2 museums in North and South Block on the subject of formation of New Delhi city. He is also a pioneer in developing conservation techniques like clay pack technique, which is still used today in the Taj Mahal. I think I don't need to say anything more. We have a pioneer, we have a very, very uh, illustrious career person, we have a very, very interesting person here amongst us. So I would welcome you formally. Thank you so much for being here with us. And I would now formally ask you to take over the session. Thank you. Arushi, unmute him.
Yes.
Sir, if you could start with your lecture. Sir, can you hear us?
So,
Hello.
Yes,
yes,
sir.
sir.
Hello. Should we start, please?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Please go on with your lecture, please.
Uh, 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 are you? Can you hear me, please?
Yes,
Yeah,
sir, we
yeah,
can.
sir, you are audible.
Yes. All
You
right.
are audible. Sir,
All
आपको
right.
screen नजर आ screen is okay ना?
Yes. Okay.
Yeah,
Now,
fine, fine.
before I start my lecture, I must thank the authorities of the Mata Sundari College, especially the team of Principal Harpreet Kaur ji and Daljit ji and all their colleagues who are working to make this webinar a success. I've been in the field for so many years, but this is, I must tell you, that this is a very challenging field, very, very challenging, and we cannot cover it in one and a half day seminar. In fact, we have been teaching these programs, these courses, especially MA Art Conservation, for more than 2 years, and still that is insufficient because this field involves various sciences, not only the history, but sciences of biology, science of physics, science of chemistry, science of pollution, science of engineering also. Everything in this field is very, very important, and one who is in the field of conservation faces challenges every day. And I am delighted that I have been facing these challenges to my utmost efforts, not only here, but all over the world. People have been working in the field of conservation, but they are facing large number of challenges. My previous colleagues who have dealt with the subject of archival records, monuments, they have given an overview of the whole thing, for which I am thankful to them that they have covered almost all things. I need not repeat them what is heritage, what is conservation, and what is antiquity, and all that. They have covered everything. But actually, when you do this, when you go into the field, you find number of challenges. So I'll, you know, the value of the heritage, and it is important that the heritage is an indispensable part of our identity. World over, heritage conservation is viewed as a subject of utmost importance for national integrity, identity, and also for preserving the knowledge and arts of the past. And in this context, UNESCO has recognized that this is the field where development, real development in moral, ethical, and spiritual values which shall come up. We in the past have been doing the conservation of various artifacts, monuments, archaeological sites, manuscripts, everything I have dealt with. But today, this 1 hour lecture, I will give just a idea, just a glimpse of the situation that we have been facing across the country at some of the sites. So I need not emphasize the importance of the heritage because all of you know it very well what is all this heritage means to us. Now, I will start with some PPTs that we have been dealing with challenges. I hope you know that the issues of Taj Mahal has been in picture for a large time, and the pollution, whenever we talked of pollution in India, we will talk of Taj Mahal. And I'm fortunate that I was head of the office. I was a department in charge of the pollution laboratories in Agra. And for large number of 6, 7 years, I dealt with this issue with firmness. And we evolved a method how to clean this monument, how to take care of this monument, arrest the pollution, mitigate all other issues besides the structural and other problems that all of you know Taj Mahal very well. Now, I have selected this is Taj Mahal because it's one of the most important monument in the country. And everybody, whenever foreigner comes, so he talks of Taj Mahal, visiting Taj Mahal. Another thing I want to tell you that yesterday there was a lot of talk of digital technology, use of this and that, and then the virtual visits. But I must tell you, all these are duplicative efforts. Yeah, please be careful. जो प्यार, जो love, जो feeling that comes from the real object, nothing can be achieved from digital conservation. I call it always across my visit programs that is a duplicative effort. Please, अगर आपको कोई ग्रंथ देखना है, आपको you have to see something. So you will see original. Original is the main thing from where a feeling comes. This is important. Feeling will never come through digital, through virtual visit. Now we recently organized a program of Taj Mahal virtual reality with the assistance of DST. But I could see that the feeling doesn't come until unless you visit Taj Mahal, you have the feeling, then only you will realize what is really a Taj Mahal. Virtual visits of tour, these are all, educative program, but the feeling will never come. So this is very important thing. And we have been teaching students that to, for example, if you take textiles, if you take oil paintings, if you take any metal object, anything, we give them sometimes, we gave them uh, forged antiquities, not real antiquities. The reason was that they should learn how to practice over the actuals, but never they got the feeling that the object or a manuscript that we are teaching is original, so they take it very lightly. This is very important. Nothing in this field is digital or virtual, only a feeling will come when you actually treat it. For example, let us go to the Taj Mahal. What are the issues of Taj Mahal? Way back in 1983 or 1984, there was a lot of hue and cry of the Taj Mahal being damaged through Mathura refinery. Mathura refinery in the northwest direction of the Taj Mahal. So, since the northwest direction is the direction of the wind, major part of the year, the wind travels from northwest direction to Taj Mahal, and where this northwest direction, the Mathura refinery was placed. So there was a lot of hue and cry that since it is in northwest direction, so the pollutants, especially the particulate pollutants, shall damage the Taj Mahal and blacken this monument. In fact, large number of meetings and committees and organizations, even experts from Italy came to find out the real issue. That sometime they suggested that this Mathura refinery be located in the eastern direction. But there are very big problems when the institution, when a Mathura refinery has been established, how can it be again shifted to eastern direction? And we faced real challenges every day, either in the press or in the TV. There was a news that Taj Mahal will be blackened, and people used to call it that black Taj Mahal shall be now again in the picture. But I must tell you that science is a very big thing. Science is a not simple thing. Science can solve many problems, but we must look into the issues very clearly, what really goes, what inside the story, how it can be removed. So next slide, please. Slide change karo beta. Next slide. So people used to say that the marble is having marble cancer. Marble cancer is something when the marble deteriorates. So a threatening disease develops. If you have seen Taj Mahal, at many portions in the Taj Mahal, there are some spots where totally it has become cancerous. But we, as such, should evolve how to get rid of this. So I will tell you how we solve this problem, and I have four, five publications on this, how we have solved this problem. Anyway, I must tell you that how we have solved this problem of cleaning the surface of the Taj Mahal. Or all of you are, some of you are science students, and all of you have studied at some levels what is the science, what is oxidation, what is hydrolysis, what is reduction, all these things are not. But we must evolve a method that whenever we take a problem, the issue was that neither it should have oxidation of the marble. It is basically a calcitic marble, most of it. Dolomite be hai, iron sulfate be hai, there's so many things. If you want to go into the details, I have a number of publications on this respect, but I will not go into detail because I have to cover this subject. Now, oxidation ruled out, hydrolysis ruled out, reduction ruled out, and other things ruled out. Where do we go now? So we evolved a method known as use of weak van der Waals forces. Some of you know about van der Waals forces. It's a weak forces that just can be used to suck the pollutants, and that was magnesium, aluminum hydrosilicates. There were silicates of this uh, magnesium, aluminum, or silicates. And the chemistry part you leave aside. You see, whenever we took that is called Fuller's earth, that we take Fuller's earth and apply on the surface with some ionic detergent on the surface of the Taj Mahal, and after drying for 24 hours, we remove all the pollutants. All the pollutants are sucked out. That is why these van der Waal forces were playing into the pictures, and we could remove the accretions from the surface of the Taj Mahal. So there are a number of publications. There's a big story behind all this method. But since 1984, when I used this and made a first publication in the journals, so since then the same method has been used. There is no controversy anywhere in the world, anywhere in the journals that the method is having problems. So we are using this method. If somebody, if you want to listen a lecture separately on how, what is the chemistry, what is the methodology involved, I can give separate lecture to my students anytime. I will give a uh, lecture on this, but at present we concentrate how we have evolved this method, and the same method is being used. We have used it um, uh, on the north and south block. There are, small floral issues on the material. We have used the same method there. A number of places in India, the same method is being used. So I am delighted that I was I was one of the um, officers involved in actually carrying out the marble cleaning of the Taj Mahal. So, if you have any questions, please do ask. But it is very technical in nature. So many chemistry, physics, and so many things are involved. I can go for a separate lecture in this regard. Next, please. So, people. Another thing, the concern was basically that this sulfur dioxide and noxious gases, all these gases, hazardous gases, are damaging and changing into sulfur dioxide, calcium sulfate. Marble being calcium carbonate, it is changing it. But we measured it scientifically. We installed instruments there, imported instruments. We find that the pH level is not changing. pH level is not changing. And so we concluded that since the pH is not changing, so there is no effect of sulfur dioxide on my, or even the nitrogen gases. So anyway, some technicalities how this conversion take place. Actually, Taj Mahal is threatened not by the gases very clearly, but by the particulate matter of PM10 and PM2.5. I have I have studied this effect of pollutants and on this on the Red Fort of Delhi, and we have found that the dust pollution in Delhi is very high. Dust pollution means particulate matter, maybe PM10 or 10. See, people talk a lot about dust pollution in Delhi. Delhi being, there are number of problems why Delhi is threatened by pollution. The major problem is this, that is in the Rajasthan belt. Rajasthan belt में all the sand particles, they're all floating, and there are cars हैं, गाड़ियां हैं, cleaning नहीं है, there are hundreds of issues, they accumulate, and then the problem of pollution comes. uh, Especially in winter season. In winter seasons, when the temperature falls down, that means the air dispersal is very, very slow. It doesn't disperse, it doesn't flow down. So that is why the pollution increases. Similarly, same thing happened at Agra. Now, if you see Agra belt, Mathura, Sikandra, Delhi, or Rajasthan area, you will see the pollution level remain almost the same. So I will not go into the details because I have to cover many things there. So I have just touched the area of, and then there is a problem. The number of environmental activists, still it is in the Supreme Court. The case in the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court is actually monitoring what is happening to the issues of Taj Mahal. So so I have given next this Taj Mahal. If you have any questions, uh, please do ask. But it become very big lecture, so I will not go into detail further. So the other thing is that the Archaeological Survey of India is having large number of problems in the issue. It has number of branches, horticulture branch, science branch, excavations branch, engineering branch, so many branches. And we are protecting only about 3,600 monuments in India. It's a very, very small number. If you compare with the USA and England, they have large number. Heritage does not mean, when we talk of heritage, you talk of think of monument. मॉन्यूमेंट नहीं है अब राष्ट्रपति भवन है कनॉट प्लेस है साउथ ब्लॉक है नॉर्थ ब्लॉक है these are all heritage buildings maybe according to the definition of antiquity or maybe according to the definition of heritage these are different but इस country में इतना wealth है you see lakhs and lakhs of built heritage in this country which need to be protected and another thing there are they talk of buildings, heritage monument, there are only 7,000. In if you make a total of this, 3,600, let us say 4,000, there are only 3,000 monuments which are protected by all the state governments. So only 7,000, maybe now it is increased to 7,500, but it's a very, very small number. There are number of challenges, fund challenges, staff challenges, technicalities challenges, and the issue of main is neglect. People neglect the country's monuments and all historic sites, including the antiquities, manuscripts. I just few days back I posted a question posted on a Facebook Rig Veda. Now people talk of Rig Veda that it is a very ancestor, but nobody knows where actually is the Rig Veda. So yesterday, Rig Veda is Oriental Bhandaranaike Institute. 1400 and something it was there. It is on birch bark. There are many things, writing materials on which these materials, the written materials have been done. And one of the weakest materials on which the writings have been done is birch bark. Birch bark is a very, very fragile material. But next is palm leaves. Palm leaves are Tala and Shri Tala varieties. They are still better off, but birch bark, this Rig Veda is written on birch bark, very fragile, and it is in Oriental Bhandaranaike Institute. I I visited it as an expert to how this can be conserved. So uh, I'm just accumulating that how things are happening across the country. So birch bark is very difficult to handle. And then I have compiled a book on manual repair of archival and library records. It's a very, very exhaustive this thing, manual. And if you want to go through them, then you will know what is birch bark, what is palm leaf, and another material. This is parchment. Parchment is also not in use nowadays, but it gives very big challenges. About few years back, I was invited by the Rampur Raza Library to help conserve the Quran. This Quran is 661 AD. It's in parchment, nostalgic. It's not a Kufic. The other writings, this thing was there. But how to conserve it? This is the technical thing. This involves knowledge of science, knowledge of handling, knowledge of guidelines for conserving the manuscripts, conserving the materials. So a lot of challenges you face. And you know, this is a very religious document. It has emotions involved. So anyway, we gave the proposal, how should we go about conserving? Another important thing, see, there are a number of guidelines which are there in our field. Important guidelines, I'm just reading it. It must not change the character. It must not change the feelings of the object. They should not. And also the materials that are used on this must be lasting, and it should not change in the composition of itself for a longer time. This is very basic thing, that all these materials and all these materials on which the writings have been done should not be changed at all. The character must remain. The compatibility of the material as well as the component on which the writing has been done important. Now, another just for your knowledge, we have preserved the Constitution of India. The Constitution of India originally, when it was written, so it has been preserved. Now you will understand it was not in a bad shape as the other manuscripts in the country, but it has to be preserved. How do we do it? For longevity. See, we have preserved it by using oxygen free atmosphere. What is oxygen free atmosphere? If some of you got a chance to visit the Parliament Library, you will get to know there are officers of my students there who are now senior officers. They will show how they have preserved the original Constitution of India. Maybe you have not heard of it. We are using oxygen-free atmosphere. That means whenever there is oxidation, the reaction take place. But the oxidation will take place with the help of oxygen. So we have removed the oxygen and use nitrogen gas in that. And there are number of parameters. It's a very difficult thing and very costly also. The National Physical Laboratory and we people are all involved were involved in the regime of first tenure of Atal Bihari Vajpayee 2003 and all. So it was successfully preserved. Still now, it is not gone undergone any changes. The other thing is that we use nitrogen flux. We have fluxed nitrogen in them, and then we have purged out oxygen from there. So, and then of course the parameters of relative humidity, pollution, and light, all these factors have been taken care of, and the constant monitoring is there. So, just for I'm recapitulating whenever it comes to my mind. I explain you things that we have preserved large number of manuscripts. We have made a national policy on conservation of manuscripts, and hopefully this will be implemented. So, uh, uh, across the country, if you see millions and 10 million, yesterday my colleague was telling you there are 10 million manuscripts in the country. Manuscripts, 10 million. Fortunately, manuscripts are not problematic as library books. It is very important. I have faced a big challenge. I'm going to organize an international program on de-acidification of library and archival records. A very technical nature. How to reduce the acidity from the rare library books? It's a very big challenge. So in India, across the libraries, if you see in the archival institutions, the library, you will find that the most of the books are brittle. Now, brittleness comes from the inherent components which have been used for making paper. So those materials which are causing damage to the paper material, they are damaging. And we have been trying to sort out this problem, but we have not been successful. But this needs a very concerted effort from all of us, from these researchers, and as a big challenge, how to reduce the acidity of the rare library books and as well as the archival materials. So the guiding principle remains that whatever we introduce should not harm the original. This is the guiding principle. And whatever we use should be economic, cheaper, and should be easy to handle and should not fade away. You should not cause any problem for the future. This is the guiding principle. of the. Unfortunately, in India, we are. You must know that neglect has caused more damage than other issues. You see, I was reading parliamentary debate. Parliamentary debate in Parliament. Some question was there that 6% of the total monuments in India have been lost. They are not traceable. This is unfortunate that if we don't list them properly, if we don't list them according to our document sheet, and encroachment will be there. Large number of issues of encroachments have taken place across the country, and monuments have been not been able to trace it. They have made a policy on conservation of monuments, but we have not been able to give a wake up call. Thank you. I must tell you that wake up call across the country is very, very necessary. Just like अभी जैसे vaccine development, a COVID wake up call is there. So we have not been able to give. We have been organizing programs here and there, but still the authorities are not serious enough to take up the issues. And the most important thing is that we must love this. How to introduce love in the heritage. This is important. I I remember I organized many programs in India. One was the taking of Guru Gobind Singh, Guru Tegh Bahadur, Guru Hargobind Sahib Ji relics across the country. I was sitting for 15 days in the Patiala, Gurdwara, and there we with all technical things in mind, we carried these relics, Guru Gobind Singh sword, pagadi, and Kanga Sahib, and Hargobind Sahib ji sword, and all these 14 things, and the Chola Sahib, of course. If somebody wants to have a details of this whole thing, I have got with them. I got them in my library here, and you see there was a huge crowd. This is the wake up call. Huge crowd across the Punjab from Patiala and route to Anandapur Sahib. So this we gave up a call. This is how wake up calls are given. That is promotion of heritage plus love. This is how we are going to achieve the purpose and of creating wake up calls. There are a number of issues. Children, you make universities, may you educate them. Your colleges, you educate them. Schools, you can introduce outreach programs. You could do a number of programs can be done across the country, and we have been doing it. But over a period uh, of time, people are not that serious. People are just going for the computers. But here, this is a field of great challenge. Greatest challenge I have felt. कभी pollution का अच्छा. For example, at uh, at Dashini Deori, I will come to. Please go. Dashini Deori का निकालिए आगे निकालिए. जैसे जैसे please go. Go ahead. Next slide, please. Next slide. Yes. Yes. Next.
Sir, should I share your next PPT?
Yes.
Just a second, sir. Is it fine, sir?
Now, Now you figure दिखाओ जरा figure. अच्छा ठीक है ठीक है ठीक है.
Okay, sir.
Now you see this was the work which you did under my supervision, of course, done in the main shrine of Shri Golden Temple. And I will tell you briefly how the technicalities are involved. See, most of you have seen Darshini Deori. Darshini Deori is the entrance to the main shrine of Golden Temple. There are two issues in the wooden doors, Toshe Khana, and the fresco paintings across the Golden Temple. Now, I hope some of you have know about the fresco technique, fresco paintings. So we conserved we conserved this entire frescoes across the Dashini Dori. This was a big challenge. Now, problem here it comes that Dashini Dori is totally exposed monument, and how to deal with it. Birds, pigeons are sitting over it, and they throw the excreta. Next, please. I will not talk about Shri Baba Talji, which we have conserved, nor Shri Akal Takht Sahib, nor the Bangla. I will only touch Dashni Dori. Next, please. Next slide, please. Now, I told you there are wooden doors. Next, please. Next slide, Balana. You can hear me or not? Next PPT page. Now, I have written, you see, this is Darshini Dori. This is Darshini Dori. Next. No, that was not Darshini Dori main entrance. You see here. So we have to conserve it. How to do it? We invited the Rajasthani artists for making of this, as well as the conservators, as well as the architect, the team of 3 people, and of course myself. We involved all these people. We documented the whole thing. It's a very difficult thing. How to document it? There is no record. Record मिलता ही नहीं है. कहाँ से पुरानी क्या चीज? What was the original in this? But the French people, they had a record. So we contacted the Louvre Museum, contacted then, and some books were there. So we could construct what actually was there in these paintings. Next. Next, please. Yes, see, just see, just see, just see. You can see, just see. Yeah, this is Baba Atal. Please don't. Baba Atal paintings also I have conserved. The entire paintings inside. These are the original frescoes in Baba Atal, which we have conserved. It took me 3 years to do that with the whole team of conservator, artist, and architect. These are the 3, 4 people we are. A team leader, architect, a conservators rather, not conservator, conservators, and artist and team to conserve this. Documentation is the first part. What we have doing, what are the materials, what are how going to evolve this, and there should be no controversy. Done things like that. Now, Darshini Devi in 1904. You see, you can see this very clearly. And this is a Baba Atal's painting. If you go to Shri Darbar Sahib, you kindly go and visit on the first floor. There are beautiful embellished paintings. They are. This is the first original fresco paintings that we have in Punjab, especially in Gurdwara, where this on the life of Guru Nanak Dev Ji, all 86 panels are there. Next, next, please. You see golden temple view through the Dashni Devi from here. These are next, next, next. You see how we have 1903, 1800, and so all these the pictures we had. So we amalgamated all of them, saw what is going on, and redesigned it, remade it according with the help of computers and teamwork. It took me about 2 years to do this work. And this is the front side. On the back side also, there are paintings चारों तरफ में. If you go to Golden Temple, kindly go. Beautifully embellished. I left about 2-3 years back this work. In 2015 I did, and they are still in a very fine shape. There were a number of challenges, I must tell you. Now the challenge was that the birds, kabutar, this kabutar was sitting over here. They throw their excreta. How to go about it? So we consulted the people who do this. They said that we can use net on this, and when we use net on this or a coating over the paintings, but I did not agree that if you put a net on this and sometime, anytime, a pigeon is trapped, and there are thousands and thousands of uh, Shardalus who are going inside the Golden Temple, and when they see on the top that a bird is dying or and enclosed in this, it will create a lot of problem in this. Similarly, coating is also not correct. Coating, we do not know how it behaves. How it behaves. Coating, of course, are there, number of them. But we are not sure because it changes with the climate, changes with the vegetational growth, everything is changing. So these are the challenges. So and also there were paintings inside this sthan. So entire paintings. Now on the top of it there was seepage. We controlled the seepage and cleaned the entire portion over here, and the monument re you know, re-established, rejuvenated according to the previous designs, um, figures. So चारों तरफ से. Then there are another issue. This is a historic monument in itself. Of course, the main shrine is there. We have conserved that also. I'm not going to talk about that because it's a very detailed lecture on issues of conserving the paintings inside the main sanctum sanctorium. There were a number of बहुत लंबा lecture होगा. Anyway, I'm just concentrating on Dashni Deori. So there is a Toshe Khana here on the top, on the side of this Toshe Khana, and then there are doors, wooden doors. They have been telling कि ये गजनवी साहब के दोस्त थे जो उन्होंने our our leaders and Maharaja Ranjit Singh's generals brought it. But I do not want to go into the historical issues. But the problem was there. They were embellished with the engraved with the elephant tusk. So when we took these doors outside, so the challenge was how to redo this gates in the similar fashion. But elephant tusk is not there. Somebody reported in the police that they are using the elephant tusk, but we are not using. We are using sippis. Sippis are the materials from sea. So very good quality sippis were available. So entire all the doors were mm, you know engraved with the help of sippis inside. So the doors were made accordingly. So this is, I'm telling you, one challenge. There are so many challenges. The Toshe Khana is there. Toshe Khana, if you want to hear the Toshe Khana, there are most priceless materials of Sikh history which are lying inside behind this and very much safely guarded in this thing. Anyway, so this is about Darshini Deori, which was 93. Next, please. Next, please. Yes. Okay. This is the interior decoration of the western door of the Golden Temple, 19. I've got all the drawings, everything from the. You see, there are beautiful paintings inside this. Next, please. Ne- Next. Uh, what I wanted to show is that there were paintings on the main sanctum sanctorum outside this. So we have we have covered this with the gold and all. Next, please. Babatal, there's a fresco painting in Babatal. When you go to this thing, Golden Temple, kindly see. You see, what I was telling. It's a field of total teamwork. One is the head, the other is the conservators, the other is the skilled artisans who do frescoes, and then the architects. These are the four. You see, we have made all the elevation, rear elevation, front elevation, the documentation of architectural drawings with the all precise, dimensions and all. Next, please. Now, there are other things in the projected area paintings were concerned. Open areas, the fresh frescoes are made. Some open areas were there. So technical details are very many, but I have just given you a idea where the things are. Actually, next, please. See, next, please. Next. You see, the, you see, all are our conservators and he's an artist. This gentleman is an artist from Rajasthan. So, other one of them is conservator here. I hope you conservators people know they have been carrying out the works with so many dedication. And next, but mind it, this is a field not of artists. It's a field of all of us. See, photograph as on 18 September. I left it in 2015 around. So in 2018, you see, still the glory, still the glow of paintings exists. Even now, if you go, they were done in the original fresco. If you want fresco technique thing, I can give a separate lecture, but I won't. Next, next, next. I'm just giving you how the challenges are being faced by us, how the challenges are there. Just by way of example, I'm giving you the challenges. Next, please. Next. Now, and also, you see, wind direction. Why wind direction is important? We also do the same thing as per Taj Mahal. इसकी wind direction क्या है? इसके pollution levels क्या है? ये भी हमारा काम है. When we give the information to the authorities, who must know what is happening. इसका pollution level कितना है? You see, this is the wind direction. पीछे वाले में pollution level था शायद मालूम नहीं. Please carry on. See the pollution levels PM 10, PM2, PM10, 60 miles. These are the safe levels. The birds menace, I have already told you. Now, annual average, this is the preventive conservation. How should we prevent? Preventive conservation is a very important field. In our conservation field, the best thing that we can do is preventive conservation. And you see, it is actually the best in the sense that there's no curative thing, there's no surgery, there's no technicalities. Uh, there are 5 elements, you take care of them: air, water, temperature, birds, yeah, biological agents, all these things, 5 elements that are there, by virtue of which we exist, they have to be countered. They are ever helpful, but they are harmful also. So, just like in the Constitution of India, I have told you, the same thing happens in our life. They damage oxidation reaction, causes oxidation reactions. But when you see the other part of it, oxygen is very necessary. Without oxygen, you cannot live. But when they damage the materials, so we have to take care of them. Preventive conservation is very important. It is a very simple thing to control the temperature. Yesterday, one of our colleague was telling to control temperature and humidity. It's a very tough subject. Very tough subject. Control of temperature and relative humidity. I tried in the National Museum. The recommended levels to they want 21 to 22 degrees centigrade. Not achievable. Not achievable in India. Across the country, if you go, this temperature, then we introduced the concept that temperature should be 20 to 25 degrees centigrade instead of 21 degrees centigrade, which is not achievable. The all these historic museums and all these things, they don't have air conditioning except National Museum, the National Archives of India, and of course the National Gallery of, they have got it. But if you talk of across the country, most of the buildings are located in the old forts, old buildings, all the museums. They cannot afford it, and it's not simply able to do it in the central air conditioning. So just I'm telling you how we take care of Dashni Devi as an example. We have to take care of pollution. You have to take care of bird venus. You have to take care of frescoes. You have to how to make it, how to design it, documentation, architecture. All these things are to be taken care of when you execute. You get the execution done. Next. This is wind direction, wind force. This also was studied by us. Wind force. These are also necessary. So when you give these figures, we tell them that this is important, that the monument must not face issues of onslaught of pollution, onslaught of bird menace, onslaught of humidity, onslaught of biological actions. All this, how difficult it is to control this. Next, please. See, next. Okay. Next. Next, please. Now, just go back, please. Just go back, please. Just go back. Previous slide. Previous. From the above data, it is proposed that. अरे बेटा, next करो. इसके next करो. हाँ. From the above data, it is proposed that the authorities should take preventive steps to control pollution as well as structural issues. This is another area of structural issues. Very big issue. The entire portion was having structural issues. What is structural issues? बिल्डिंग में स्ट्रक्चर के ऊपर सीपेज हो रहा है, बिल्डिंग की क्रक्स डैमेज हो रहा है. सो ऑल दीज थिंग्स, स्ट्रक्चर भी उसको साथ में लेना. Also, documentation should be made available from time to time. Preventive and curative steps be taken in consultation with the experienced conservator. See, yesterday I was hearing two of our colleagues. See, it's not simply if I give you a Quran, let us say, Quran of 6th century AD. Can you do it? It's not that easy. If I give you a Rig Veda or any other Granth, manuscript, can you do it? It's not that easy. It's not that easy. Removal of acidity, temperature. There are hundreds of parameters involved and hundreds of issues involved from management side also. If I do a conservation, for example, on Quran, the emotions of the community will be at the highest peak. They will say what Mr. Singh has done, he has done wrongly. But And then we have to take into consideration a management which should help us to understand that this is thing we are doing, not that आपने काम शुरू कर दिया, आप पैसे estimate दे के you are not involved. People, involving people from all sides, management sides, technicality side, ये बहुत जरूरी है. आपको कुरान को हरा दिया, वो सारे वर्ल्ड में मेरे को तो मार देंगे, they will issue a fatwa. This is a very difficult field. Even in the Golden Temple, even in the rare granthas of the Sikh history, everything, anything. So I conserved some of the Raja Ravi Verma's painting when I was director, National Museum. You see, Raja Ravi Verma paintings are very rare in India, very, very rare. I hope all of you know about what the values of the most valuable asset in India as far as oil paintings are concerned is Raja Ravi Verma, where besides being technical nature, we can take care of technicalities, no issue. But the people there on the other side, the city of Trivandrum, they want their involvement. We should make a team of them, tell them beforehand, this is the work we are going, this is the materials we are using, this is the methodology we are doing, this is the documentation before and after everything. So you see, it's a very, very tough field. Next, please. Next, please. I have next another PPT. Next, please. Now, care of paintings and conservation. I'll just give you a brief, information where how we evolve things across the country. Next. See, I told you about the issues ethics. This is a very important thing. If you don't follow the ethics in conservation, you will be gone. The issue is method should be reversible. What should be the, for example, nowadays we are using two kinds of, they were using cellulose acetate foil as an adhesive and tissue paper. See, this tissue paper, Japanese tissue paper we are using. Now this cellulose acetate foil, which we are using and did a lot of damage across the country. How? There is a subject known as vinegar syndrome. Vinegar syndrome, you must have heard. Vinegar syndrome is that cellulose acetate foil combined with the acidity of the material releases acetic acid. Now the acetic acid is acid and the pH of the paper goes down. Plus whole thing becoming a strengthening, it becomes a weak, it becomes a brittle. Very, very tough thing. Now I've seen at many places at Nalanda, Lord Buddha's writings, the writing have been done. They have been damaged by cellulose acetate foil. So I advocate that cellulose acetate foil should not be used. Problem is that if the acidity has been reduced, made into 8, 7.5 to 8, it is okay. But the technicians which they do, they don't neutralize the acidity. As the result, that the whole thing collapses. And when the whole thing collapses, the chemistry and physics is changed. This is the problem. So please be careful use of materials. If you want a separate lecture, I can tell you what material should be used for manuscript, for metal, for stone, for monument, everything. This is a different field in itself. And how should we carry out preventive conservation? Now, should not change the properties of the art objects. Very clear. Minimum. Another important thing is should do minimum intervention. We should not involve too many technologies, materials invention. जितना काम हो सकता है उस पे मिनिमम कीजिए. Don't involve too many things. And then whatever you do, it should be distinguishable. Distinguishable means when you have done, you should be able to see that this has been entered, this has been made, restored. The man who, the authorities or the custodians, whosoever, or they should, they should be able to distinguish this has been done. This is important field in ethics in conservation. This is very, very important thing. That's what I am telling you. Next, please. Now, whenever we do, I am not going into the history issues. They are very simple. You see the complexities of the rock paintings. India is full of rock paintings. And if you go to Ladakh, Leh Ladakh, all these places, now it is become a union territory full of rock paintings. But who cares for them? Nobody cares for them. There are rock societies of India, there are institutions, but it's very difficult to say. Now, cave paintings, in Ajanta, Ellora, then palm leaf painting, paintings on palm leaves have been done. Then illustrated Indian painting, illustrated Western Indian painting, then miniature painting, cloth painting, बहुत सारी paintings. I mean, India is full of material science, full of material science. Just see how conservation, how difficult the conservation is. I'm just explaining you how difficult the conservation is. That not only a history, not only the technological material, but also all the issues are to be put into one perspective and then evolve a strategy, evolve a methodology of teamwork, doing the work and getting the work done. Next, please. Now you understand what is the sport, checkup, clothing, anatomy, everything. We have to understand the anatomy. We have to understand what it is, why it is coming, where the things are. I told you that paintings are the most important subject as far as jobs are concerned. The wall paintings and and the paintings, the fad painting, the tankha painting, people are doing across the country. So there is a separate training on each subject of this thing, but one must learn how to make a tanka painting, how to make a fad painting, how to make a varli painting, and so on and so forth. Must know the structure of the painting and doing it, and then you attempt conservation. Next, please. Next, please. I am not going into this. In the all of you know about कितने टेम्परा पेंटिंग है, कितने ऑयल पेंटिंग है, पेस्टल पेंटिंग है, बहुत सारी चीजें हैं. There are hundreds of things. India is actually a country where lakhs, crores, all materials are there. How to do it? This is the biggest challenge, very big challenge to conserve all these material. Monuments हैं, churches हैं, गुरुद्वाराज हैं, paintings हैं, artifacts हैं, तलवारें हैं, क्या ग्रंथास हैं. अभी कितना काम हुआ है, मेरे हिसाब से बहुत कम काम हुआ है इस विषय पे. तो दिस इज द बिगेस्ट चैलेंज. नेक्स्ट प्लीज. आई एम नॉट टेलिंग इनटू डिटेल्स. You can go through. Next, please. Of causes of deterioration, I have just told you there are two causes basically, internal and external. Both can damage the materials, and I'm not going into the details. I've just now, in the case of library and archival material, I have discussed the main cause of deterioration of archival and library material is inherent materials, the materials of which it is composed of. That is causing the problem. If you go to any library in India, you will find hundreds of rare books getting brittleness, and no authorities are not caring. This is a big. We can solve them. We have methodologies to conserve this anyway. Then there are external reasons. External reasons, so temperature, humidity, biological actions. I recently, there is another biological action. Biological actions are very important. If you see many granthas, they have been eaten by the termites. Termites are one of the social insects which you must have seen. एक incident बता दूं how to diagnose. Termites make tunnels. Termite make tunnels and they travel in the night, not in the day. In the dark place, not in the night, but in the dark places. And they have a house, big Rani queen sitting over somewhere, and millions of them traveling and eating food. I had a very big challenge as far as Golden Temple is concerned to issue of termites. Number of problems, number big, very big problem. This will take separate lecture for the next number of things in this issue. आगे बेटा do's and don'ts are there. बहुत सारे do's and don'ts है. क्लीनिंग. अब देखिए आप अपने घरों में एक पेंटिंग लगा देते हैं. फॉर एग्जांपल देयर आर डूज एंड डोंट्स होते हैं. इतने सारे मैं पढ़ने लगा तो शाम हो जाएगी. एनीवे आई एम जस्ट टेल यू वन थिंग. देयर आर 5 एजेंट्स: ह्यूमिडिटी, टेम्परेचर, air pollution, light, biological action. These are the 5, 6 main agents. Supposing you hung a oil painting on the wall. When you hung a wall painting on the wall, there is a moisture trapping around. Moisture है उसके पीछे. Naturally, the painting will be damaged. So you be careful that there should be no moisture inside. And then our recommended levels of humidity. We recommend that we should have a humidity of 45% to 50%. 50 55%. इस रेंज में रहे. हमने इंडिया के from the consideration of Indian point of view, we have changed. European people are much more smarter as far as this, but there are number of issues with them also. But we have made 45 to 55% humidity इसमें रहता है, क्योंकि उससे 65 से ऊपर होगा तो फंगस ग्रोथ हो जाएगी. नीचे रखेंगे तो डेसिपेशन हो जाएगा, डेसिकेशन हो जाएगा. I have seen it Rajkot Museum. Rajkot is a place where in Kutch area where there is a Watson Museum. There, the Watson Museum, you will see all the artifacts having desiccation. Desiccation is something where the moisture is tapped out. उसमें उस एरिया में साल्ट लेक है. साल्ट कच्चिस साल्ट समुद्र है जो उससे साल्ट सक कर देता है moisture को. When it sucks out, the moisture is removed from the antiquities and entire is desiccated. Anyway, so don't flaking out, don't place painting against the wall, don't roll the painting. Rolling भी नहीं करना है. Don't अब watery में eatables भी खाना नहीं है. Don't use incorrect methods. There are so many things. If we talk on this subject, it will not follow principles and ethics in conservation. Next, please. Next, please. Some materials I have listed some materials, but these materials are some, but they will keep on changing, revising. Lights, waxes हैं, paintings use करने के लिए अलग हैं, और analysis करने के लिए another field of analysis. You see, fakes and forgery, another problem. We have to deal with everything. I remember a case in National Museum. Tipu Sultan sword. Tipu Sultan came into the picture because there was some court case. Somebody made a court case that this Tipu Sultan sword in the National Museum is fake. Now, how to do this? How to do this work? So, we there is Institute of Physics in the Bhubaneswar. Institute of Physics, very renowned institution as far as analytical analysis is concerned. We send the materials to Institute of Physics. Now there are many problems. Sending itself is a problem. Security issues, उसका 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 जो valuation issues. मैं ऑब्जेक्ट टीपू सुल्तान के this sword I am sending, for example. What is the issue? The sword has to be sent. What is the correct value of this? If the sword is lost in between, what is the value of it? There is another issue to appoint an expert committee to evaluate this. भाई ये इतने $1 million की है या कुछ भी है, फिर इसको वहां पे जो similar exercise, security people going, and then चलो, these are all solved. For example, now it comes back with a figure that these are the analytical components. These are the metals of the Tipu Sultan sword. Okay, fine. दे आ गया. उसके बाद में we wrote it to Hyderabad. There's another sword there, Tipu Sultan. Then the Hyderabad people, we told them that we want to authenticate this sword with the one which is having in the National Museum. They are not ready to give us, the sample. How to do it? So crossed. It's not possible. अगर मेरे पास 10 oil painting है राजा रवि वर्मा की, and I have data with, then only I can speak this is Raja Ravi Verma painting or not. Very difficult. लेकिन अगर डाटा ही नहीं है तो मैं क्या कहूँगा, ऑथेंटिकेशन कैसे करूँ? So Hyderabad Salarjung Museum refused. Okay, we have to do. There is a one Tipu Sultan in British Museum, London. We wrote to them. They also said we will not part with the sample. So the whole problem of fakes and forgery is in India is a very, very tough subject. Recently, only 1 week back, I received a telephone call to authenticate Tayyab Mehta's painting, oil painting. Then I told my colleagues, I cannot do it scientifically. Supposing I do it with the X-rays, with the analytical tools, this. But there are forgers. The forgers are much more cleverer than we people. They, for supposing I say कि ये तैयब मेहता की पेंटिंग है, इतने करोड़ की पेंटिंग की वैल्यूएशन का सर्टिफिकेट एसपी सिंह ने दे दिया, मान लीजिए, where and the gentleman has bought a painting on my certificate, for example. Just giving an example. Now the people who have bought crores of rupees that Tayyab Mehta's painting, and somebody said कि ये genuine नहीं है, then I'll be put behind the bars in a court of law. I can't do this work. This is simply beyond my understanding. Problem is another one. These forgers, or for example, some painting of somebody, वो कहते हैं जी ये genuine, there are genuine signatures of this gentleman, artist. But who will say that this is the genuine signature? Genuine signature is done by forensic sciences, everything we can do. But still there is a doubt. The creation of doubt comes, then the whole field is double. I was involved with the physical Lalit Kala Academy as a consultant to authenticate and document the painting. Lalit Kala Academy has large number of paintings inside, and they want to authenticate. This is the work. I can document it. I can measure it. I can measure the colors. I can I can do the analysis. Everything you can do. But authentication, some artist painting is very, very tough. So this is based on only subjectivities and not on other things. So anyway, this is another field of fakes and forgery in which in Indian context is very difficult subject. उनके रिश्तेदार ही बोलते हैं कि ये नॉन जेन्युइन को जेन्युइन बोल देंगे. Their own people will tell it is genuine, whereas other issues will crop up in the court, and then it will be in trouble. Anyway, I think next please. I will quickly fix up because so many things. आगे चलो, not. There are so many things that scientific and doxymethylcellulose cellulose. Chalo, anyway, these are materials that we come. आगे चलो. Next, please. Keep on doing it. Next, lining and all that. आगे चलो. Please go on. Please go on. Uh, uh, ठीक है. Next, please. Next, please. Keep on. अच्छा, another thing. Pigments. This is another area we faced in the issue of pigments. Pigments in the ancient time, in the olden times, they were from the stone itself. From the rocks itself, they could take the take the mm, take the ores and crush it and make it into fine. For example, red ochre, hematite, azurite. All these are from the rocks. Direct from the rocks, they have used it on miniature paintings or the wall painting. Now, they are the ones which are most durable, and the modern colors, they are all deceptive. So when we doing work on the frescoes in Golden Temple, we had to borrow original materials, bring it to the Amritsar, and the main materials were from Italy. We had to procure this thing. Anyway, I, next please. Next please. Clamp. What is a very I am just giving you a overall pictures where the things are actually, how we should look to the science in a different manner. It's not the way we look. Conservation is a very simple thing. It involves all sciences. Next. And technologies, of course. Or we have slide. Next, please. Next, please. You see, there is another department. आगे चलो, आगे चलो, आगे चलो, चलो, ऊपर चलो, ऊपर. You see, next, ऊपर, ऊपर, next, ऊपर. Go ahead, go ahead, go ahead, go ahead, go ahead, go ahead. एक मिनट, नीचे, नीचे, नीचे ले जाओ, नीचे ले जाओ. और नीचे. You see, I was recently invited a very important institutions which is called CAG, Comptroller and Auditor General of India, a very important institution. And that institution governs all government departments, how they function, what were their objectives, why they were not working, and they make a list. So I was involved in that, and they asked me to prepare a all central government museums in India, and also the monuments of the central government protected under them, to make a review whether they are working or not. So so I've listed number of issues, what they are able to do it to the best possible funding, to the best possible infrastructure, how they should. There were some issues which I explained. This work could not be done. Anyway, they will restart, and I will be having a number of people with me, the art historians, the conservators, the audit people. All these things will be old and study. For example, the National Museum, whether they are able to restore it, the objects, whether they are able to digitize it, how many of them achieved, and security issues or outreach programs, all these things, a museum should have, whether they have done it or not, whether they have used the funding of that. So I'm involved in that also, but organization set up building, and then another area which is a very serious concern, and that is disaster management. Recently, only last month back, I was involved this to do disaster management for the National Museum. You see how difficult the work is. We involved the highest authority in India. You see, there is only one institution in India which gave 5-year degree on earthquake engineering, and that is in Roorkee. Maybe in IITs or Central Building Road Research Institute. Maybe there it is. They gave 5-year degree on earthquake engineering. Professor Arya, Professor Emeritus, he's no more, of course. He was involved in this. We involved them in separate in Kutch when the disaster took place in Kutch area. So we went there and stabilized the Kutch Museum and all that. But you see, structural issues, flooding issues, electrical issues, building issues, all sciences are involved in this. How to do that? So we involved the experts, involved the highest, all this, and made a expression of interest for them and submitted them. So there are only two firms which quoted for disaster management planning in India, and our was one of the firm which took challenge. And then another issue. I was in San Francisco. There, they are the perfect stabilizing of the artifacts inside that museum. If you go to the Google and all and see how the San Francisco Museum, I went for this purpose only to San Francisco to see what is happening, how they have stabilized. So this is another area of concern. Stabilizing the artifacts in the building itself so that when it falls down, it doesn't break down. Similarly for textile, similarly for materials and other things. Anyway, next please. So I'm just explaining you various enormous challenges and the opportunities, of course, which are there in this country for better jobs, for better things. Next, next, conservation. I hope that, and then the educational programs are very important. You see, educational programs are the main functions of the museum. You see, any children, जो बच्चा 7 और 8 साल का होता है, below 10, उसकी capturing power सबसे ज़्यादा होती है. He captures maximum knowledge during his time when the growth is there for 5 to 10 years. So there we have to involve the children to capture the whole thing, that they are inculcated with those values of art and heritage in the country. So there's बहुत सारी चीजें हैं, training है, friends of museum you can do. Then another is the security issues. Next please, ऊपर करिए. Security. This is another area of concern. Security कैसे करेंगे? Security का बहुत बड़ा challenge है. Anyway, पब्लिक यूटिलिटीज भी प्रोवाइड है कि नहीं, ये हमारे उस मैनिफेस्टो में था, उस प्रोग्राम में था कि दीज आर द वर्क्स व्हिच आर वी आर गोइंग टू डू फॉर द नेशनल म्यूजियम, विक्टोरिया मेमोरियल एंड ऑल म्यूजियम्स, centrally governed museums. This is the CAG thing. So they have approved it, but because of COVID, this could not. But I will be doing it sometime later when things are normalized. Next slide. Exhibition. And exhibition is a very important subject, but exhibition is the one thing which involves a rotation policy of the objects. For example, you do it for Harappa Art Gallery, so you display sometime, then you remove it, you display sometime, you display the other artifacts. So it keeps on busy the curators. Curators are in always in the lookout for issues. Museum to be checked is a national museum. Chhatrapati Shivaji Allahabad Museum, Indian Museum. These were the museums which I proposed to visit and make on the above recommendations, whether they were carrying out, utilizing the funds of the government for these purposes. Next, please. Similarly, for the monuments, similarly, these are the budgets were there, how many people will be involving and all that. Yeah, so anyway, I just give you कि कि budgeting कैसे बनता है, ये भी एक issue है, how we make a budget, how to carry on this work smoothly. Next, please. Next. Next, please.
So this is the last page of your PPT.
Okay. See, do I have more time?
Sir, I think we should sum up now.
No, I'll sum up now. My colleagues from the Mata Sundari College, especially Dr. Professor Harpreet Kaur, Daljit Kaur, and all of you, I have tried to acquaint you the the issues of heritage conservation vis-a-vis the management. In our country, our growth will take place only, our love will take place only through culture, through heritage, through artifacts, और किसी से नहीं होगा. और कोई भी चीज ऐसी नहीं है जिससे कोई मोल्ड कर सको किसी को भी. एक श्री गुरु ग्रंथ साहब से मोल्ड कर सकते हैं, श्री कुरान से मोल्ड कर सकते हैं, भगवत गीता से मोल्ड कर सकते हैं. एवरीबॉडी लिसन्स टू देम. सो दिस इज व्हाट दिस समरी इज, एंड देयर लाइज द पॉइंट that we should preserve the original, उसका उसका जो अस्तित्व है वो बरकरार रखने. Then only people will love each other. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, sir, for your informative session. As a conservator, I think you have confined with lots and lots of knowledge for us. Thank you so much, sir. Panchali ma'am, to you now.
Yeah, thank you so much, sir. It was a really, really engaging and very insightful session. I think as students of history, we do establish the fact that heritage is very, very important to us, and we do try and involve our students and the society at large to engage with our heritage, live amongst our heritage. But the kind of efforts, the painstaking efforts that the conservators have to take, that they go through, is an area that is usually missed by students at the undergraduate level. And today, I think the kind of experience, the invaluable experience that you have shared with us through all the work that you have done and all the slides that you have shown to us students, I'm sure that area, that gap
Not
that
all
was
the
always
works, very less.
some of the work that you have done, some of the important work that you have done, that
Very
gap
some,
has
only
been,
1%.
yes, sir, yes, sir. So that
Big
gap has
challenges,
been,
big challenge.
yes, yes, I totally understand, and I think the talk has really stoked the interest of the students because I see so many questions in the chat box, which we will be taking up in the session after Dr. Kalyani's lecture. After that,
All
we
right.
will be having a common session of the question answers, which will be done by Arushi. So now, if I can move on to Dr. Kalyani's lecture, if I can introduce her with her permission. Dr. Kalyani has obtained her master's degree in conservation, preservation, and heritage management from Delhi Institute of Heritage Research and Management. She has completed her PhD in museology from the National Museum Institute, New Delhi. She is currently serving as the assistant registrar in National Museum Institute, New Delhi. She has also worked with the National Rail Museum as senior museum officer. She has also been associated with Art Life Restoration Trust as a conservator. She has also worked as coordinator of the Yuva Sathi program at the National Museum. Thank you so much, ma'am, for joining us today. And if I can request you to please go ahead with your lecture. Ma'am, you will have to unmute yourself. You're mute right now. If somebody can unmute her from our side, Arushi.
Am I audible?
Yes, ma'am, you are now. Can everybody hear her? Because I can't.
Panchali, I think she is muted.
Yeah.
Dr. Kalyani, please unmute yourself. Yes. Dr. Kalyani, there is a echo from your side. I think you have joined through two devices. Have you joined using two devices, Dr. Kalyani?
Arushi, if you have her phone number, can you talk to her over the phone?
Yes, yes.
Hello, is it clear now?
Yeah, you're very clear, ma'am, now. Yeah. But can we see her?
Good morning, everyone. First of all, I would like to thank the Department of History, Mata Sundari College, for allowing me to present a paper on this. And this is a good initiative by the History Department because what we need in today's time is a culmination of like things so that we get to achieve something which we have always strived for, and that is the preservation of our cultural heritage. So I'll be talking about how museums and heritage are interlinked and they can't be without each other. They are two sides of the same coin. So I thank Mata Sundari College, all the coordinators. I'm happy to be a part of this program. So can we start the presentation?
Yes, ma'am. You can start it.
Yeah. Can you please do the
Sorry to interrupt you. Some echo sound is coming. Arushi,
Yes, ma'am.
is it कुछ echo आ रहा था मैम की तरफ से?
Ma'am, now it's fine.
Now it's fine. अच्छा screen
ma'am.
पे फिर आप screen she is not visible to me. Is it okay?
She is visible to me.
अच्छा, okay.
Yes, ma'am.
नहीं, slide is there, na? Slide is there of a name.
Kalyani ma'am, do you want me to share your PPT or you will share it?
Can you please share it?
Just a second, ma'am.
Yeah.
Give me 2 minutes.
Yeah, please.
Yeah, man. How are you? Yeah. Till then, she will start sharing your PPT.
Yes,
I'm Daljit here. I'm Daljit here from Mata Sundari College.
Mm-hmm.
Welcome, ma'am. Welcome, ma'am.
Thank you so much.
Yeah. We are really fortunate to have you here.
Mm-hmm.
And I hope you will also. It's our pleasure कि आप हैं हमारे साथ हैं. Till then, she will start that PPT with you. And she will start sharing that PPT.
Yes.
Yeah. So I was just thinking ki let's have it because the slide was on that coming and you were not visible at that time. Right, ma'am?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Just in a second or so, we'll be back with that.
Yeah.
So once again, warm welcome to you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Ma'am, can you see the screen?
Yes. It is
perfect. Fine, ma'am?
Yes.
Yeah, this
perfect.
is fine.
Okay, ma'am. Thank you.
Yeah, Ruchi. Yeah, everything is fine now. We can start. Yeah.
Thank you. Can you please go on to the first slide? The next slide, I mean.
Yes, ma'am.
So these would be my lecture contents. So what is the museum, and then what is the difference between museology and museography? Then what happened before museums came into being? Then the development of collections in museums, how it happened. Then of course we come to the next keyword of the second keyword of the lecture, which is heritage. So how can we identify different types of heritage, and how museums house them, have been housing them successfully over the past so many centuries. Next slide, please. So this is a museum. I don't know how many of the students present in the lecture are from a background which is close to museums. So that is why I thought of first introducing the word museum itself to everyone. So it's a Greek word museon, from which this word museum has been taken, and it means museums. Muses. It means which indicates the 9 muses, 9 goddesses, Greek goddesses, who were responsible for learning of different art forms like music, poetry, history, all these things. And the museum is, of course, a concept which has been given by the Westerners to us, to India. But India itself has a nice history of collecting. You must have heard about the chitrashalas that royal courts had. So they were actually painting galleries, the art galleries. So we did have something like a collection exhibited in a room for people. So the concept was always there here in this country, but of course it wasn't named as museum. And museum, so to say, is a public institution. So even in the Western context, the precursors to museums, which were known as Cabinet of Curiosities, they were open only to the elite class, only to the learned and elite members of the society. Very similar to our royal chitrashalas, where only royalty could go and see the art exhibited in the form of paintings and other things. So, and also we have the history of having intangible cultural heritage like dance, music being performed in royal courts, in temples. So we do have, so when we talk of culture, we have intangible cultural heritage, we also have tangible cultural heritage. Tangible is something that you can touch, you can feel, you can touch. And the examples may be an object. So you, for example, we all are having a laptop or a mobile phone. So this is something that we can touch. So this of course will become a heritage after a few years, right? So this and all the objects, the age-old objects that we use, they are all examples of tangible cultural heritage. Whereas when we talk of intangible cultural heritage, it is something that can be felt but not touched. So here I can give the example of dance, music, or something that, or some kind of drama performance where you can feel it, and you can't touch it. So that is intangible. So in India, we did have the exhibition of tangible and intangible cultural heritage in one or the other forms, but not necessarily named as museums. Even in the Western concept, the word museum, the idea of public institutions exhibiting for everyone, exhibiting for the public in general, came much later, after the French Revolution. Before that, it was Cabinet of Curiosities, which was open only for the elite class. So there is this institution called ICOM, International Council of Museums, which is headquartered at Paris, France. So this was formed in 1946, and there's a branch of UN, United Nations. So so this ICOM, International Council of Museums, it gives definition of museums, and it has given it from time to time, because with changing society, with changing interpretations, the definitions also need to be relooked at and also modified accordingly. So the latest definition of museum was given in 2007 by the ICOM, which says that a museum is a non-profit permanent institution in the service of society and its development, open to the public, which acquires, conserves, researches, communicates, and exhibits the tangible and intangible heritage of humanity and its environment for the purposes of education, study, and enjoyment. So the word tangible and intangible is something we already saw a few minutes back. So the museum has to be non-profit. Now, before going on to the next keyword, heritage, I want to tell you what exactly a museum is and then how we can view heritage in it. So when we talk of museums, and as this definition says, it is a non-profit organization. So the exact definition of non-profit you may not be able to find anywhere, but maybe in few books. What it means is the museum is a non-profit institution. What the sentence means is whatever the museum earns through tickets and through other services will be utilized for its own development, for the upgradation of the facilities given by the museum. So the museum, whatever the museum earns will be utilized for the development of that particular building, that particular museum only. So this is why it is called non-profit. It is not making any profit. Whatever it is getting, it is utilizing for its own betterment. And then it is a permanent institution. It's going to be always there. So when we talk of learning has different areas. For example, when we talk of learning, we have formal setup, we have informal setup, and we also have non-formal centers of learning. In the formal setup, it is usually a school or a college which will have predefined subjects. Students will come and study whatever they want to choose. For example, if they're going to choose science or humanities or commerce, they will have some other set of subjects with one of the main subjects. Then there is an examination, there is a result. Everything takes place formally. So that's where learning in a formal way happens in a formal institution like college and other educational institutions. Whereas the informal learning is something that you get in families. For example, you just observe things around you. You may actually see how a small boy is holding the hand of his grandfather or grandmother and taking her or him crossing the road. You learn so many things. You know how, or you have a birthday celebration, or you have any event or festivity. You know how people are behaving. So you learn a lot of things there also. Of course, it is not evaluated in a formal way like an examination, but that is also a form of learning. But then in between formal and informal also has this non-formal kind of learning, which happens in museums and other maybe art galleries. So this is where you have a subject. For example, you are entering a science museum. You know you're going to learn something about science and technology, or you're entering an archaeology museum. You know you're going to know more about history or archaeology of a particular period, of a particular place. But at the same time, nobody is evaluating you, nobody is judging you there, and nobody is wanting you to stick to one gallery itself. It is your wish. If you want to spend more time in the canteen, if you want to spend more time in the parking area, or if there are multiple galleries in the museum, you want one particular gallery interests you more than the others, and you want to spend more time there. So of course, no marks are cut for that. You can actually spend any number of hours in any number of galleries. It is up to you. It is up to you. So this is actually education in an entertaining way. You are your own teacher. Of course, you will have some more people. You may visit a museum with your friends, with your parents. So you also discuss with them. And whenever you see an exhibit, you would like to discuss it among yourselves, the family and other things and other people. But at the same time, you define and you decide, okay, I want to see only this much of the museum today. I will not cover the whole museum, or I would like to see only these two galleries. I am not interested in the other. So this is the non-formal setup of learning. Okay. So this is what a museum is, where one learns so many things in a non-formal way. Okay. Next slide, please. Arushi, can you please forward it? Next slide. Yeah. So as I told you, before the French Revolution, the formal museums were not there. So the phenomenon of collections of objects is ancient. As I told you before, we had also collected so many things. Even in India and the world context, we see there have been libraries, there have been multiple collections of rare books and other things. So we had the Neo-Babylonian era in the Mesopotamian civilization. There also we had the example of collection and curation of Mesopotamian artifacts. Next slide, please. So the early developments of the museum. So why I want to first tell about museums rather than heritages. Heritage is a very common word. Of course, museum is too. But heritage is something which we all relate to. Whereas museum is something where I need to tell you in detail, because there are different categories of museums, and the functions of museums also vary from other educational institutions. A little bit of variation is there. So that is why I wanted to...
May I interrupt? May I interrupt you?
Yes,
Yeah,
please.
yeah. I think our students are noting down. So I would just request you. Can I request you just informate? This is very informative, and I think thoda slow they will be able to note it down. Though they have these papers, but still it's informative. They would love to. I think a bit slow. A bit slow is okay.
Okay.
So,
Thank you so much, ma'am.
I think I can. I think I can request you, right?
Yes.
Yeah, a bit slow. Okay.
Yes.
Yeah. Thank you. Sorry to interrupt you.
No issue.
Yeah.
No issue. So now, when we talk about the early developments, so we had the historical reviews of the development of collections. They were published in German. So that was published in 1837. So this is pronounced as Zur Geschichte der Sammlungen für Wissenschaft und Kunst. So this is something which translates to art history, art, how they are, collected and some detail about that. So these have been published as early as 1837. And then the International Office for Museums within the League of Nations, 1926. So that was Mr. Henry Foxron. So he also published Museum from 1926 to 40. So these were the publications which talked about the early museums of the world. Prior publications also had Die Kunst und Wunderkammern. So Wunderkammern, so this is again a German word, Die Kunst. Die Kunst is the art. And Wunderkammer, Wunder is wonder, Kammer is a room. So the wonder rooms. So what were these wonder rooms? Anything that was rare, that was exquisite, was collected and exhibited in rooms. So those rooms, which now we know as museum galleries, those galleries were known as Cabinet of Curiosities, wonder rooms, magic rooms. So this is what they have, this is what the title suggests here, Die Kunst und Wunderkammern. So this was published in 1980, and again, museology. So the International Council, the International Museum Conference of 1934, Madrid, in Spain. So that also led to the museum movement, led to the development in the museum movement, because there was this person called Stransky, who was one of the main persons of one of the, I think, scholars of museology, and he had given a lot of concepts of museology and how things work in museums. So he had also published a lot. In 1937 also, his edited work was published, and he had published after that also. Yeah. Next slide, please. So the first, so there are these two terms called museology and museography. So museography and museology are related to museums. Museology is the study of museums, the roles of museums, roles and functions of museums, what they do, how are they relevant to the society. All these questions are answered in the subject museology. Why exhibitions are done, what kind of exhibitions are done, what kind of museums are there. And then we also have the other word called museography. Museography is how practically the museum work is done. For example, we have an object we have to document it. So one of the primary duties of any museum is to document their collections. Why documentation is important? If we are going to give that object to some other museum for a temporary exhibition, or it is going to some other place for conservation, because it requires some sort of primitive conservation, or it is going for the photography section so that it is photographed in a nice way and put up on the Google page or anything like that. Whenever an object moves from its original place in the museum, it might have been kept in the gallery or kept in the store, it is important that it comes back to the same place in its original shape. Because it can happen that it is so brittle, it might break, it might lead to some cracks in the object. So it's important to document it, how big it is, what is the color of the object, what is the time period when it was made, who made it, whatever information you can get. Of course, there are some details that we may not be able to really tell who exactly made it 1,000 years back. We really don't know. Probably we would be knowing which dynasty made it, under whose patronage was this object made, but we might not be really able to guess the artist's name. Okay, so whatever information is available, we have to document for each and every object that is there in the museum, whether it is in the store of the museum or in the gallery of the museum or in the photography or conservation lab of the museum. It has to be documented. So the practical, so whatever you study in museology, like documenting the object, you're practically doing it. You're practically writing down on a piece of paper or on a Word document or on an Excel sheet. Okay, this is the dimension of the object. This is the color of the object. So the practical procedures of museums is museography. Museography is practically doing the museum work, whereas museology is the study. So museology is theory, museography is practical. Okay, so there was this person by the name Philip Leopold Martin who used the term museology in 1869 in his book. Yeah. Next slide, please. Next slide. So as I told you before the museums, the modern day museums, the modern day public institutions called museums, we had libraries, we had universities, we had chitrashalas or art galleries, we had cabinet of curiosities in the Western context, which had collections and exhibited it also, but only for a few, only to a few sections, to few people of the society, the learned or the elite. So these things were not exactly public institutions. Of course, university and library were public, but in those days, not everyone was allowed in certain buildings of art and learning. So this is the thing. Next, please. So we have the Alexandria Museum, which is one of the earliest museums in Egypt. I mean, in the world itself. It is located in Egypt, and there was this Library of Alexandria that, and it is supposedly the first organized, the first organized museums also, about 3rd century BCE. So you can note down how old the first museum has been dated to. The purpose, of course, was only research and education. Okay. In which respect it was much closer to the present day museum, because aaj ke bhi jo museums hain, the main role is to research and to educate, to spread awareness. So that is what they also did. But of course, it was not serving the society as much as the modern museums, because this time the concept alag tha. It wasn't like this before. Next, please. So we have these phases, like after the Alexandria Museum that that was datable to 3rd century BCE, we come to the next phase, where around the Renaissance period, we had the revival and advancement in many fields of knowledge like arts, science. So because of this period, so Renaissance can be termed as a revolution. Okay, it was a revolution. People were urging to be more aware and see to it that they gain more knowledge. Even in art, for example, you will see the paintings were differently made. Then the concept of illusion and other things, they also came into play, the concept of light and shadow. many things changed in the Renaissance period because people were constantly experimenting with different concepts. So this led to a knowledge boom. Everyone was wanting to gain more knowledge. And this was the period of awakening also. And the period of Renaissance was also followed by the period of enlightenment, where people really valued knowledge more than anything else. So that was the primary goal of the common man there, during the Renaissance period, to gain more knowledge in whatever field he or she wanted to. So the 14th to 16th, 17th century, we had Renaissance period. So in Florence, Italy, 15th century, we had the center of intellectual growth supported the best of arts and sciences. And the word museum was first used to describe the collection of Medici. So Medici, the royal family in Italy, so they had a huge collection of art objects, paintings. So that is like Palace of Medici has now been converted into the into museum. So for the first time, the term museum was applied to a building was the Medici Palace, the collection of Medici actually. So those times what happened, we had many explorers who went from one country to other countries. And of course, the borders were not that defined as we see in the modern map. So people would really, the explorers will go to different places, not only their own place, they'll go to different places, rather different countries and continents, and they'll collect whatever exquisite and rare they would find. And they would keep collecting and then exhibit them in certain rooms, certain cabinets. And these cabinets were known as Cabinet of Curiosities. Okay, so there were many anthropological materials also, archaeological objects also, which were in their collection. So at the onset of 16th century, we had the French castles, the English country houses. So there were paintings in these castles. And they were referred to as galleries. So आज जो हम museums and art galleries की बात करते हैं, you can actually trace these terms back to 14th, 15th century also. After that, in the early 16th century, we have Studiolo. Studiolo provided an accessible and art-oriented version of the Schatzkammer. So Schatzkammer was again a German word. And by the mid-16th century, a variant of these small studies in the form of Cabinet of Curiosities or Wunderkammer, as I told you before. So these different names, all of them mean almost the same. It may be wonder houses, it may be houses of awe and curiosity or magic, things like that. So these are all the synonyms only of the same word. And it consisted usually of a room. This is very important, how the old ancient of cabinets looked like. It was one single room where there were the walls, ceilings, rooms, cupboards, drawers, everything had a collection, everything. So basically, pura room bhara hua hota tha. There will be some drawings, there will be some objects in cupboards kept. So wo aap glass showcases se dekh sakte the what is kept inside the cupboard. If you just look up, you will see the ceiling. Ceiling mein bhi kuch aapko bana hua dikhta tha. So everything was there, and mostly we can see anthropology or natural history. Natural history things were more popular. So when we talk of natural history collection, please remember anything related to plants or animals is considered as natural history. When we talk of museums, museums can be categorized into many different broad headings. For example, you have, now I will tell you, there are two ways of categorizing museums. One is who is administering the museum. Is it the state government? Is it the central government? Is it a private trustee who is which is running the museum? So that way we have central museums, we have state museums, we have district museums. So ये सारे जो है government run, yes, government में it can be state, central जो भी है. But we can also have private museums. The private collectors, they have also established their own museums, some of them. So they are private museums. So we have different categories of museums depending on who is controlling it and financing it. Okay, that is one kind of categorization. The other kind of categorization that comes into play when we talk of museums is its collection. One is वो museum किसके द्वारा संचालित है. So आप उसकी तरह से उसको define करते हैं. The other is what kind of collection it is having. Depending on that, one museum can be known as art museum, archaeology museum, science museum, natural history museum. ऐसे कोई भी museum हो सकता है, depends on its collection. for example, we are now talking of natural history. So the early explorers of 15th, 16th century, 14th, 15th, 16th century, they collected many things from the sea, okay, from sand. बहुत सारी उनको चीजें मिलती थी which were remnants of some plant or animal which looked exquisite, rare. So the natural history collection dominated the collections. Okay, so बहुत सारे collections हो सकते हैं उसमें natural history सबसे ज़्यादा dominate किया. Even in India, the earliest museums had more of natural history collection. Then only the archaeological collections became more popular with the advent of Archaeological Survey of India. That I will come to later. Okay. So after that, to entertain and amuse was the primary aim of these cabinets because itni rare cheezein, so whoever used to enter the room was actually shell-shocked. How so many things, and he or she would not be even able to see everything because the room was actually full. You can't really focus on one particular object because itne sa space mein you will have so many objects kept. How can you actually focus on one single object? So you will be actually stuck with awe. Oh, how come the explorer has collected so many different things from different areas? So that's why they are wonder rooms, wonder kamas. They will they gave you a feeling of wonder. Yeah. Next slide, please. So this is a photo of Medici Palace, Italy. Next. So the Medici Palace, the first museum of, and this redefined European collecting practices. So this was built by Cosimo de' Medici. So Medici was a royal family, and they had all the means to all the resources like money, people to go and collect things. And it came at a time in Florence as a result of the growth in banking, trading, mercantile activities. So obviously, when the economy is booming, you will have more time for leisure activities. Please understand, in this world, there are many countries. There are some developed countries, there are developing countries, and there are also underdeveloped countries, right? So when actually people, the government surveys all these, when the institutions survey these countries, they find out the underdeveloped countries, since their economy is not that developed, they are striving hard to make their ends meet. They are striving hard to make a good living. Therefore, they will not have time to indulge in leisure activities. उनके पास समय नहीं होगा leisure activities करने के लिए. उनके पास समय ही नहीं होगा. उनके पास main धंधे के लिए वो main धंधा ही करना चाहेंगे, so that they will have some kind of income and their house keeps running. When we move on to developing countries, you will have different families. You will have, the developing means some people might have some more time for leisure activities. Some people will have less time for leisure activities. But leisure activities will again not be the main activity the people will be doing. Like in our society, for example, India, which is a developing country, the agrarian activities are dominant. Why? Agriculture is rather dominant because we know that that is one of the primary source of income for so many people. And the developed countries, you will see people go to museums. Now there is a common complaint that the Indian public doesn't go to museums. What happens is we just see the scenario of the city, whereas most of the population, even now in India, most of the population is rural population. Because most of the people live in rural areas. There you don't find much museums. And even if there are museums, the people there are not well aware of what a museum is. And of course, they have to look after their earning activities because they don't have the luxury of sitting and having everything because of course there is lack of resources. So this is what happens. Whereas in cities in India, like for example, Delhi is a metro city, we can expect more people to visit museums because people here are more educated because of the resources that we have, and also we have people who have time for leisure activities, time and resources for leisure activities. But again, museums still are not very popular destination, even in the metro cities in India, which I think we all should change. Yeah, and when we talk of developed countries like USA, UK, their museum going activity is is a famous activity. Many people, many children in their summer vacations try to go to different museums. their parents are very eager to take them to different museums and art galleries, because they have this time also for activities, resources for these activities. And of course, in India, the scenario can always change for a little better, because we do have some families where they can really afford, and they have the resources to do more of museum visiting than mall visiting or other things. Because museums is something which will give you knowledge in a very entertaining way. And as I told you before, non-formal place of learning is what a museum is. And whatever you missed in schools, you can easily gain in museum, because when you see it, when you see the object, rather than just reading about it, you will remember it more. There is a Chinese proverb, right? When you see, you just remember, but when you actually experience, so when you actually experience something visually and experience something, you will remember it for a lifetime, Yeah, so the Medici Palace combined in a new way earlier practices, including the treasure gathering of the medieval princes, and the newer practices of collecting classical things. Like, so these are termed as classical, the sculptures, the manuscripts, because these are age old. Fragments of buildings and coins, all these you will find in museums. So these were also in Medici's collection. Okay, next please. Next slide. So so a particular gallery of the Medici Palace is the Uffizi Gallery. It dates Uffizi literally translates to office. It dates back to 1581 and relates to the royal family tree. Built by Vasari, who is an artist also. So continuously expanding, and because the collection is expanding. Expanding ka matlab ye nahi is just not that the building is expanding. It also means the collection inside the building is expanding. So earlier, if it was having only 2,000 objects, it might have now 3,000 or 4,000 or 5,000 objects. That is also one of the meanings of expanding. Expanding is not only the expansion of the physical building. It also contains paintings, etc. So Uffizi Gallery, Florence is very popular, and if some of you have time, you can always check it on the internet how it looks like. Next, please, and you can also visit if you want to whenever the situation gets better. So the aim was shifting from the glorification of God to the glorification of man, especially the patron. Patron was usually the donor. So this transition period ran throughout the 15th century Florence. So in Florence in the 15th century Italy, what happened was, earlier, whatever the collectors could gather from the nature, as I told you, natural history specimens. If a leaf has dried, pink color leaf has dried, it looks so beautiful, they were collected. Or the shell, okay, on the sea of the snail. So you collect all these things. So the collectors collected the natural things, the creation of God. So, but in 15th century in Florence, paintings made by human beings, made by man, or sculptures made by man became more important. Not more important, but they were glorified more. So that is why they have used this word glorification of God. Now it has the focus is glorification of man, because more of man-made things were being collected and exhibited in Florence in the 15th century. Next slide, please. So the Cabinet of Curiosities, which I was talking about before the museum, these are the precursors to museum, before the museums came into play. So now the Cabinets of Curiosities, or the palace, or the Wunderkammers, they were not open to everyone. Only to select few, they were open. So the Cabinet of Curiosities was also like that. So this was the 15th, 16th century onwards. These were prevalent, and mostly in the western part of the world. And they were mostly personal collections of adventurers, explorers. And the aim was to induce a sense of wonder or awe, because the personal collection, as I told you before, they can relate to anything related to archaeology, natural history, science. And this was majorly for the elite and well-educated. They were only allowed inside, and it was a random display. So I want to talk on this also. Random display is, there is no categorization as to what should be kept where. So if I got 100 objects, some are scientific in nature, some are artistic in nature, some are religious in nature. I'm just putting everything together. I am not segregating them on the basis of the theme or the subject.
ये science का cupboard है. This is the cupboard for archaeology. This is the room for science, for technology. I am not segregating it. I am just putting it randomly. किसी के भी साथ मैंने exhibit कर दिया, रख दिया. So this is how it is. This is what is known as random display. Randomly they are displaying without giving any thought to theme. Thematically display करने का कोई fundamental वो नहीं था उस time में. They were just randomly displaying it in the cabinet of curiosities. Next slide, please. So this is how the cabinet of curiosities look like. Can you see? It is like, you know, even in the ceiling you have something, the cupboards. Okay, so the room is full of drawings and paintings and real objects. Okay, so you can see this is how the cabinet of curiosities look like. So it was very difficult to focus on one particular object, but उस time के लिए it was deemed important, and of course the main drawback was it was not for everyone. It was only for the elite class to go and see inside them. Next, please. So the types of museum, as I told you. So administration, whoever is controlling the museum, the state the government museums and private museums and trustee museums, and you have different museums like that. And museums can also be categorized on the basis of the collection. So some can be art museums, some can be archaeology museums, some can be natural history or science museums, and some can be multi-purpose museums also. For example, National Museum, New Delhi is multi-purpose museum, because if you go there, you will find paintings, you will find musical instruments also, you will find coins also, you will find objects and sculptures also. So it's a multi-purpose museum. You will also find arms and arms. Okay. Next, please. So this is the Ashmolean Museum, Oxford, which was made in 1681. So this is the first public museum of the world. Of course, this is much before the French Revolution. I told you the concept of public museums, that means institution being open to everyone, started after the French Revolution. But this is an exception. This came much before the French Revolution, at least 100 years before the French, almost 100 years before the French Revolution, Oxford, UK. But it was public. तो लोगों को यहाँ पे जाने दिया जाता था. Ashmolean Museum. So this was the collection of Ashmolean. That's why the museum is named after him. Next, please. So the first modern museum emerging from Cabinet of Curiosities, it was opened and it was a private collection. So the University of Oxford, they were presented this collection by Elias Ashmole, who was already, collecting so many things, and then was in origin already half a century old by this time, because this was mainly the collection of John Tredescant and displayed it to the public, first by him and later by his son John in their dwelling house. The collection was universal in scope, with man-made and natural specimens from every corner of the known world. So it was diverse, it was holistic, because it had collections from many parts of the world, and it also had man-made and natural specimens, both exhibited. Now, in 1659, John Tredescant Jr. handed over the collection to Ashmole by deed of gift, with the collection that Tredescant or his wife, if she outlived him, should hold it in a trust for Ashmole. And with John's death, Mrs. Tredescant proposed to leave the collection to the University of Oxford. So Mrs. Tredescant gave the collection to University of Oxford. Next, please. So we already spoke about Ashmolean Museum being the first modern museum. The first modern museum, why? Because it specifically designed to display the collection. So it was not a random display, which was happening in Cabinet of Curiosities. Here, they were categorized. They were first categorized and then displayed according to category. Organized, to display its collection, organized so that the university could use it for teaching purpose and being open to public also. So in that sense, it was very much modern. It was open to public, and also they did not have random display. And even now, like the modern museums are used by schools for educating their students, their children. So that is why the University of Oxford, which was already giving so many academic degrees, it utilized the services of this museum for learning, for the purposes of learning, for the purpose of teaching the students of Oxford. So there were these departments, 5 curatorial departments in the museum, in the Ashmolean Museums. Antiquities was there, cast gallery. So the sculptures के जो cast होते हैं, वो सब रहे थे वहाँ पे, वो सब रखे गए थे. Antiquities, of course, it covered a big range, and then we had the Eastern Art Gallery that was mostly about Southeast Asia, Japan, Korea, China, and then we also had coin room, and then the Western Art. So these were the 5 curatorial divisions that the Ashmolean Museum had way back in late 17th century. Yeah. Next slide, please. So this is the British Museum, 1753. This was formed. So this is how it looks like. It is again a very big museum, and it also has collections from across the world. So whatever collection we talk about, it is actually heritage. What is heritage? Which has been handed down to us from generations to generations. So the previous generations have handed us so many things in terms of science, art, religion, culture. So all these things put together is heritage, and we have these heritage in the museums. So the heritage in the form of collections, different collections in different fields of knowledge. Next, please. So Sir Hans Sloane, he was the one who collected those collections were exhibited here in the museum. He collected more than 71,000 objects, bequeathed the whole collection to King George II for a payment of £20,000 to his heirs. And the gift was accepted 1753, and the British Museum was formed as a result of the government's acceptance of responsibility to preserve and maintain collection, not only for the inspection and entertainment of the learned and the curious, but for the general use and benefit of the public. See, the concept of Ashmolean Museum, which was open to the public, वही चीज आप British Museum में भी देख रहे हैं, because the aim was not only for the inspection and entertainment of the learned and the curious, but for the general use and benefit of the public. So the concept of public institution is somewhere there even in the British Museum's agenda. Okay. Next, please. So the founding collections largely had books, manuscripts, natural specimens, antiquities, and ethnographic material. These were the collections, including coins and medals. बहुत सारी चीजें थी, prints थी, drawings थी. All these were in the earliest collections of the British Museum. Next, the Louvre Palace and Museum. So if you actually, this was the first famous public museum, because this was a result of French Revolution. Louvre Palace and Museum is in France. Okay, so when the French Revolution took place in 1789, the main aim was that everyone will have equal rights. Everyone should have equal rights. Okay, everyone should have access to things, to everything. So this museum is also a product of that only, and the museum had this message very clear that this is open to everyone. Everyone should come and enjoy the museum, the palace and the museum. And the famous Mona Lisa painting is also exhibited in this museum only, the original Mona Lisa. Yeah. Next, please. So established in 1793, so that was one of the earliest museums, European museums, and the collections were Egyptian antiquities, Near Eastern antiquities, Islamic art, sculpture, decorative art, paintings, and drawings. And the palace, a medieval fortress, the palace of the kings of France, and a museum for the last 2 centuries. The architecture of the Louvre Palace bears witness to more than 800 years of history. Louvre Museum was originally designed as a palace. So see, these are redesigned museums. Why redesign? Because these spaces, the space of museum The palace was converted to a museum. Okay, so originally these structures were not made keeping in view the requirements of a museum, because they were palaces. Afterwards, they were converted to museums. Okay, so this is one of the example of such converted place. The idea of the palace, of the muses or museum where one could view the royal collection. It was born in 1747, and in 1791, the assembly declared that the Louvre should be used as a museum to display the nation's masterpiece. So rather than the palace, it has to be the museum. And it was open to the public in 1793. Next, please. So what was happening in the American continent? We had already looked at the European continent. So what was happening in America? So there also they had English colonies, and in 1776 they had the American Revolution also, as we all know. So the first permanent museum established by the Charleston Library Society in 1773 on the eve of the American Revolution, in order to collect materials for a full and accurate natural history of South Carolina. So now you hear the word natural history here. So this was one of the main, one of the keyword if you read the sentence, because natural history को उन्होंने document करने के लिए, to collect करने के लिए, they did this, and many gentlemen were asked to say natural products like flora, fauna. What is flora, fauna? Plants and animals. So उसके जो so by natural history, this is natural history, or minerals, with careful descriptions to be looked after by curators. Now see, the educational role of museum is also being highlighted in this. Please pay attention to this. Careful descriptions to be looked after by curators. Now, who is a curator? Curator is a person who cures, who curates. Curate word has come from cure. What is cure? हम लोग बोलते हैं ना, prevention is better than cure. So what is cure? Cure से आया curate, और जो curate करते हैं वो है curator. And where will you find curators? You will find them in museums also. So they curate the collection. जो भी objects है, जो भी collection है, they curate it. So what is the main work of the curator? They need to document everything properly. They need to see that the objects are in good position, in good condition, and they can be viewed nicely by the visitors. And there are simple labels given so that they can also have basic knowledge as to what this object is, from where this object was obtained, who made this object. So curator has a very big role to play in museum education, in museum exhibition also, in museum documentation also, in museum publication also. Everywhere, in every sphere, a curator's role is very important. He will work with different people. If it is education, he will work with educators, psychologists. If it is architecture, he will work with architects. You know, what should be the architecture of the gallery, the room. So, and if it is documentation, of course, he will sit with historians and who will be good at documenting things, who are more of researchers. So a curator has to sit with other people like designers, educators, historians, researchers, and then form a team and do work. So here it is written. So whatever the Charleston Library Society was trying to do is asking people to take care, to take care of the, to send the collection, whatever they have, of animal, of plant, of anything, of some natural mineral, and then the descriptions to be given by the curators. Why descriptions are important? Because we may not be knowing, as lay persons, we may not be knowing what each object is. If it is a pen, we know it is a pen. But do we know that what kind of ink it is using? If it is just, we are not supposed to use it. It is inside the showcase. How do we know what kind of pen it is? What kind of a phone it is, or a purse it is? So it is always good to give a brief description and the history, small background of that. Okay, so that is what they were also trying to do back then in 1773. Next, please. So then the Palace Museum, Philadelphia, it was opened in 1785. 1846, Smithsonian Institution, the biggest in the world. It has more than 30-40 museums inside it, actually. If you ever get an opportunity to visit Smithsonian, please do it. Please the previous slide. So today the Smithsonian complex in US includes National Museum of Natural History. मतलब देखिए Smithsonian के अंदर इतने सारे museums हैं. और भी हैं, the list is big actually. I've just selected some. The Museum of American History, National Museum of Natural History, National Gallery of Art, the National Portrait Gallery, Sculpture Garden, Zoo, and Anacostia Neighborhood Museum. So the concept of neighborhood museum, Anacostia Neighborhood Museum was the first neighborhood museum. So what is this concept of neighborhood museum? So whoever is living in the neighborhood, हम लोग जितने भी neighbors हैं, आस पड़ोस के हैं, we will collect some objects and we will make a museum in our locality itself, and we will be the curators. We will take care of the running of the museum. Of course, there might be a little bit of support financially and in other ways from other societies or something, but basically neighborhood museums are, in every neighborhood you have a small museum which collects the history of that particular place, and the neighbors, the people, the local people look after that. So it is a very beautiful concept which started off with Anacostia neighborhood museum. Next, please. The state of New York officially incorporated the American Museum of Natural History on April 6, 1869. Okay, so that was the American Museum of Natural History. So you see, natural history was the prominent subject, okay, of the collections. सबसे ज़्यादा collections किसके हुए? Natural history के हुए, which included plants, animals. Next. Yeah, so the Pitt Rivers Museum, Oxford. This was one of the earliest museums, not very early, not as early as the museums we had already talked about. So Pitt Rivers Museum, it was again a collection of a person, and it is there in Oxford, and you will see that it is more like Cabinet of Curiosities. Even today it is more like Cabinet of Curiosities. You have many showcases, and there are so many small objects kept there. Okay, next please. Asia. So we talk of Asia now, and we all need to be proud that the first Asian museum is in India, and that is Indian Museum, Calcutta. Okay, so Indian Museum, Kolkata was established in 1814 by the society, I think Asiatic Society. Yes, and then we had Shanghai in China, 1868. Then Tokyo Museum, 1872, which was National Museum of Nature and Science. So the first museum in India is the Indian Museum, Calcutta. Whenever you get a time, you should visit it. It's a very big museum, has many galleries, many themes. I mean, the collection is vast and diverse. You should do it. So 1814 means it has already completed 100 years of existence. 100, no, 200 years of existence. So that's a big thing. That's quite a heritage, right? Next, please. This is how it looks like. So the museum movement in India, let me tell you, the museum movement has been most active in America, followed by Europe. But then Asia is also picking up, like Singapore, China, they're doing very well. India is little lagging behind, but we are going in the right direction. We are having many museums right now. We are establishing many museums, and we are also trying to renovate the existing museums in a way which will suit visitor needs. Next, please. So the growth of museums in India is very interesting. As I told you, 1814, the first museum was established, Indian Museum. But the main reasons of growth of museums in India are these four. First is the establishment of Archaeological Survey of India, which happened in 1861. Archaeological Survey of India, the first Director General was Alexander Cunningham. So in 1861, when this was formed, the main purpose of establishing this was the British had sensed that India has a lot of wealth in terms of cultural heritage. So there were a lot of drawings being made of old temples, sculptures, all these things. So ASI was, just excuse me. Yeah. So the Archaeological Survey of India was formed with the intention of documenting the vast cultural heritage of India. British were quite aware of this fact. So they thought, why not establish an institution which will work towards the documentation, collection and documentation of cultural heritage. So this took place in 1861, and Alexander Cunningham was was a pioneer in this, and large-scale excavations and explorations took place, and that's how we found the Harappan civilization. The Indus Valley civilization was found out because there were large-scale excavations. Okay, so in Pakistan, where they were digging to build a railway line, there was something, and they thought, no, we have to actually excavate it and see, and that's how this big, beautiful, ancient civilization of Harappan Valley was known to us. So large-scale excavations and explorations took place. So what happened? Because of these excavations, explorations, they were all funded by the government, and the ASI officials took keen interest in that. Indians were also there in the team. So whatever they collected, where will they keep it? So they constructed museums to house these collections, because they had already seen the success of museums in their own country. So they wanted to replicate their success here also. That is how we had museums, because the British wanted to display, showcase, and document everything, whatever they had found during explorations and excavations in museums. So they had to have some place, right, to keep all these objects. That's fine. But when the Harappan civilization was excavated, so many lakh of objects came into being, and they all had to be adjusted in different museums. Okay. Then there were a lot of donations also for many royal people gave their own personal collections. Interest of local kings. So local kings also gave a lot of money towards these activities of explorations. So that is how museum movement started in India in the that is how it started, the growth of museums in India. And earlier there were mostly we had certain galleries which had natural history collections, more of natural history collections. But after the advent of archaeological excavations, more archaeological material were found and they were kept in museums. So that is why now we don't have many natural history museums, rather just 6 or 7. We have more of archaeology museums in India, because archaeological excavations is the archaeological season that it outnumbered the natural history collection, and now we have more museums of archaeology. Next, please. So the Asiatic Society of Bengal. So they studied the Asiatic Society studied the Indian environment and culture, and they wanted a solid institutional footing, so that because the British wanted to rule us for the lifetime, so they wanted to rule us in a way that suited them. Okay, to order and organize a vast material for advancement of different natural and human sciences. So they wanted to do all this because they have found out so many things here. This was indeed a very good place for them to, explore. The central urge was collecting and not displaying. So when they started collecting, naturally they had to seek some place where these collections could be kept, and that were the museums. And museums, of course, you have to display it. Okay, so museums for specialist gaze of scholar and collector. So for special people, in the sense scholarly people, it was there. But then afterwards, everyone was it was open to public also. Contributions ranged from ancient monuments, sculptures, coins, inscriptions, utensils, tools, weapons, musical instruments, animals, plants, minerals, and metals. All these things were there. And if you see the Indian Museum, there is a separate Bharhut gallery also. Bharhut, which is in मध्य प्रदेश. So वहाँ का जो बुद्धिस्ट जो स्तूपा वगैरह है उसका भी एक अलग से गैलरी है. Asiatic of the Indian Museum, Calcutta. So they have a different separate gallery devoted to it. Okay, so this is all our heritage. So we can see heritage in museums. Next, please. So Indian Museum, Kolkata, 1784, when the Asiatic Society of Bengal was founded by William Jones. So this was instrumental in the society was instrumental in establishing this museum, and this was actually known as Oriental Museum of Asiatic Society. It was not known as Indian Museum before. It was Oriental Museum of Asiatic Society, Calcutta, and then Nathaniel Wallich, he was a Danish botanist. He was a botanist, Danish botanist. He was the first curator of the Indian Museum, and it was renamed as Indian Museum in 1866. And in 1875, it was shifted to its present building, which is in Park Street. Around 15 galleries, like Bharat, as I told you before, bird, mammal, mask, archaeology, these galleries are there in the Indian Museum, Calcutta. So it's one of the biggest museums. You should all go and visit whenever you get time and whenever the situation is appropriate. Meanwhile, you can also search about these museums in, online searching can be done, and you will be surprised. There are so many wonders waiting, in the museum. So it will be really a good experience, especially for history students, archaeology students, even science students, to look at the development of archaeology or development of history or development of science through in objects in museums. So whenever you go to a museum, make sure that you make notes also. You remember also. You remember, whenever you go, you can make a short note of whatever you have seen, what galleries, what objects had attracted you the most, and that will remain in your memory forever, and you will enjoy researching also. So research will become an enjoyable activity if you actually try to spot them in museums also and start researching about them. Next slide, please. So the storehouse of natural history and industrial art. So in the Indian Museum, as I told you, Indian Museum was established before the advent of Archaeological Survey of India. Therefore, the primary theme was natural history and industrial art, and there were botanical and zoological specimens. Of course, that's what is natural history about. And that was the main theme, natural history. Okay. Afterwards, archaeological things were also added. Next, please. The Madras Society. So the second museum was the Government Museum at Chennai, 1851. So the proposal came in 1846, and Dr. Edward Balfour was the first officer in charge of this museum. 1851 this was formed. I think it was Museum of Economic Geology or something like that. Yeah, if I remember right. Next, please. Now, Archaeological Survey of India, 1861. Initial function. So why I have put this slide is just to tell you, just to focus on this, that the establishment of ASI was instrumental in setting up of so many museums in India. So the initial functions of ASI included survey, excavation, documentation, and conservation. And we all know Major General Alexander Cunningham as its first Director General, and he was the one who led many excavations during that time. The Indian Museum enriched with several Gandhara sculptures, Barod railings, and gateway also. So why? So Indian Museum before ASI's establishment did not have these sculptures and railings. Okay, only after the advent of ASI, when these things came, they thought some of these can be adjusted in the Indian Museum also. Next, please. So then we go back to we are actually covering this chronologically. 1860s, 1870s, then we go to 1880s, 90s, and the first decade of the 20th century, which is 1900 to 1910. This is the era of Lord Curzon and Sir John Marshall. Sir John Marshall was instrumental in documenting many Harappan sites, and Lord Curzon supported this. So he became the Viceroy of India, and John Marshall became the Director General during the same time. And then they decided that archaeological site museums should be there. So what is the concept of archaeological site museum? Archaeological site is a place where there are archaeological findings, where you find age-old objects in digging, you get all these things. That is an archaeological site, the place where in excavations you find these things. So when they are taken out, they are subjected to different temperature and pressure. They are actually staged when they are underground, the objects, because they are, as it is, they are so cold. So they are very comfortable in that cool temperature and pressure underground. But when they are unearthed, when they are taken out, there is a change in temperature, there is a change in atmospheric pressure. So this can lead to its breakage, to its brittleness. So what happens is when we actually carry those objects to the museums, to the conservation laboratories and museums, we are losing our time, in losing time in giving it a proper treatment. So why not having site museums itself? Matlab, we will have a museum built in that archaeological site itself, so that as and when these things are recovered from digging, they are put inside the conservation laboratory of the museum, and they are displayed in the museum itself afterwards, after the conservation treatment is given to them, wherever it is required. Not every object will require conservation treatment. Okay. So after the treatment and whichever doesn't even need the treatment, उसको हम फिर साफ करके थोड़ा clean करके then we are going to display it. So it is contextual if you see the object in the same place from where it has been procured. So you have a Harappan object and you are displaying it in a very high scale metro city. It will lose its significance to some extent. Okay. If it is displayed in the same place where it was excavated from, it will have more value because it is in the same surrounding. Okay, it will appear more meaningful to you as a visitor. Okay, that is why the concept of site museums emerged. And archaeological and these were the site museums: Sarnath, Agra, Bijapur, Nalanda, Sanchi, Baripada, and Odisha. That was one of the early site museums. If I'm not wrong, I think it was 1902 or something. So that was also there. So we had so many Takshashila, we had site museums in these archaeological sites. Okay. Next, please. Next slide. Thank you. So site museums means site ka matlab not archaeological site. It can be any site, but here it is archaeological site museums. Site museums का मतलब ये भी हो सकता है there is a science का कुछ है and वहाँ पे आपने science museum बना दिया. Okay, but this is in the context of archaeology, so this is archaeological site museum. Rather than just saying site museum, it is important to prefix the word archaeology. Archaeological site museum. So the era of Lord Curzon and Sir John Marshall that we are looking at, the increasing intake of Indian assistants and scholars in the museums and for research purposes, involvement of Indians in the excavations. We know Dayaram Sarani, the chief excavator of the Harappan, and also Rakhaldas Banerjee, R.D. Banerjee, who was instrumental in the excavation of Mohenjo-daro. Then Pandit Rai Bahadur Krishnan central to building of archaeological collections of Mathura Museum. Mathura Museum ka jo main archaeological collection, that was mainly the contribution of Pandit Rai Bahadur Krishnan. So these people employed many Indians. Why? Because Indian scholars had the knowledge of Indian history, Indian scripts, and many other things, which they lacked. Of course, they were not as fluent in Hindi or Sanskrit or some ancient languages in which we already had people. We Indians had. So they wanted the knowledge of Indians to be used and for exhibiting, for documenting, researching, and then exhibiting and putting up labels, because they need the knowledge of language, script, all those things, which they were not having at that point of time. Of course, there were some people like James Prince who also was instrumental in reading of ancient scripts, but they wanted Indian scholars for this because it was very difficult for them to handle it single-handedly do it. Next, please. So the site museums, archaeological site museums, it indicates both geographical location and archaeological content. There are specific cultural repository, a collection, and then located near important archaeological monuments and sites. They preserve the antiquarian wealth resulting from excavation and exploration. What has happened? And objects displayed in their natural context and ecological background retained, which is very important to study an object. You can study the object better in its natural environment. Okay, this was the place where the object was found. This is how the people lived. This was the weather. This was how things were. So it is very important to recreate the ancient age to understand their objects. We can't understand fully or clearly the ancient objects with a modern way of understanding of cities and other things. Okay. Next, please. So why site museums? Archaeological site museums were important. Lord Curzon had declared this. Why? So when he was presenting the Ancient Monuments Preservation Bill in 1904, he said Objects of archaeological interest can best be studied in relation and close proximity to the group and style of buildings to which they belong, presuming that these are of a character and in a locality that will attract visitors. Otherwise, if transferred elsewhere, they lose focus and are apt to become meaningless. That is why they need to be studied in their own natural surroundings. Then only they will retain the meaning. This is what Lord Curzon had to say when he presented the Ancient Monuments Preservation Bill. Yeah, next please. So then going little back, we had some museums established for commemoration of certain people visiting our country. Like we had Prince of Wales Museum when Prince of Wales came. Yeah. And we had Victoria Golden Jubilee, Diamond Jubilee, so we had some museums. So the Victoria Technical Institute at Madras as a Museum of Crafts. It was named as Museum of Crafts. Then the Victoria Memorial Hall, Calcutta, 1921. Watson Museum in Rajkot, 1888. Then Baroda State Museum in Picture Gallery, Baroda, 1894. So these were some of the associations with royal people visiting the country and then renaming the museum. We all know the Prince of Wales Museum, Bombay, has now been named as Chhatrapati Shivaji Museum, right? So that has been renamed. So we had to rename some museums when some special, some royalty was coming to the country. Next, please. Awakening of national sentiments. This was important. Because when we talk of museums, the idea of nationalism, the idea of patriotism, that is foremost. So here, we have the educated upper class, which developed a keen interest. Because they were quite aware of our culture, our heritage. And there was a gradual awakening of public to museums. They started developing collections and we had the Museum of Bangla Sahitya Parishad. In Calcutta, we had Ashutosh Museum of Indian Art, University Museum, and then we also had Tata Collection. So this was a Prince of Wales Museum, which is now known as Chhatrapati Shivaji Museum of Vastu Sangrahalaya. So this, we had personal collections also, and there was this nationalist sentiment also, because we as a country were trying to feel united and drive away the foreign forces so that we get freedom. So this was also central in establishing museums, because there was an awakening. Like we had this 1857 revolt. That was a major awakening. That created a major awakening in many of the Indians that yes, we should have our own people in our country and our cultural heritage has to be highlighted. And this can be done by collecting and then displaying it in museums, and they all wanted to contribute as much as they can to the museum. The personal collections were also gifted to the museum so that they were in safe hands. And of course, किसी के पास personally कोई collection हो, nobody will go and see. If it is in a museum, everyone will go and see, and that will inculcate in the mind of the visitor a sense of nationalism, a sense of patriotism. That was very important. And that is central to gain freedom also. Next, please. Post-independence. So, post-independence, there was this idea of national museum. So, Mortimer Wheeler, who was, I think, who started the museums branch in the Archaeological Survey of India in 1944, or 46 years, 46. He joined, he established a separate branch called Museum Branch in Archaeological Survey of India. And Wheeler also said once that India was perhaps one of the few countries which, even after gaining independence, did not have a national museum. So having a national museum was also important, because India was just freed from foreign clutches in 1947, and then there were different people and there were not these many states also. Some were under some other rajas. So to inculcate a feeling of oneness and unity, it was important that there is a common museum called National Museum, and which has all the objects from every nook and corner of the country. That will inculcate a sense of unity and diversity in people. So the idea was, yes, we are diverse, but we are united as a country. So that is why National Museum is very important to every country. National Museum has to be there. So National Museum, the idea of National Museum came in 1949. The foundation stone of the National Museum, New Delhi, was laid in 1955 by Pandit Jawaharlal Nehru, the first Prime Minister of India, and then it was opened to public on December 18, 1960. The National Museum, New Delhi, was opened. Let me tell you, in 1949, what happened was in 1948 in Burlington House, London. 1947, India gained independence. Then the very next year, 1948, in Burlington House, London, the British people, because they had already seen the Indian artifacts, they are so beautiful, they wanted to showcase this in their own country for their own citizens. So they held a huge exhibition of Indian art in 1948, Burlington House, London. So the Indian government was requested to give different art pieces so that they can be exhibited there for the common public of UK, of Britain. So that was a successful exhibition. Everyone liked the Indian art there, the foreigners, the UK people. And then upon its return, all these objects which were collected from different states of India then, वो सब जब वापस आए, they were all collected because it was huge in number. It was decided that it will be exhibited in Raj Bhavan. Raj Bhavan is Rashtrapati Bhavan, our president house. It was earlier known as Raj Bhavan. So it was exhibited there. The whole collection which was sent for exhibition in UK. When it returned, rather than giving back to the states, to the respective states, they were collected in Raj Bhavan, and then the idea of having National Museum of India germinated, and then the whole collection was transferred to the present building of National Museum. Okay, so ICOM, as I told you, International Council of Museums, which is headquartered at Paris, was formed in 1946. But the Museum Association of India, which is still functional, MAI, Museum Association of India, it preceded the ICOM. It preceded the International Museum Organization by 2 years. It was formed in 1944, Museum Association of India. It also has a yearly journal, which is known as Indian Journal of Indian Museums. That is the name of the journal. Journal of Indian Museums. So many scholars contribute articles to that. So museology as a subject, the study of museums as a subject was introduced as a university module. जैसे आपका MA, BA है ऐसे ही इसको भी MA history है, ऐसे MA museology ये सब भी किया गया. So MS University Baroda was the first university to introduce it as an academic discipline in 1952. This was followed by Calcutta University. ये सारे universities का अभी भी department है. They are in running condition. They are fully functional. Many students have passed out successfully and doing well. Okay, so followed by Calcutta University and Aligarh Muslim University in Aligarh, then Banaras Hindu University that also offers museology as a course. Aligarh University has MSc Museology. The others are mostly MA Museology. They have MSc Museology. The Aligarh Muslim University has MSc Museology. And then the National Museum Institute, New Delhi, which is inside the National Museum only, that also has 3 courses: MA History of Art, MA Conservation, Art Conservation, and MA Museology. Okay, next please. So we see that number of museums also increased in India, and also the study of museums became popular, and it became a subject, a subject to be taught at the university level. So the number of Indian museums, if we see the old documentation, by 1857, India had the Indian Peninsula had 12 museums. By 1900, it has 26 museums. By 1911, it had 39, and by 1936, it was having 105 museums. Now, at present, we have more than 1,000 museums. Most of them are government-run museums. Most of them. Okay, some of them, probably 10% or 5% of them are privately run. Next, please. The types of collection. 1936, the following 6 categories of museums were identified in 1936. There is a report of Markham and Hargreaves, which Hargreaves was a Director General of Archaeological Survey of India. So we had archaeology museums, art collections, natural history, medical museums, commercial, agriculture, and forestry museums, and ethnology museums, ethnology collection. So the collections were divided into 6 in 1936. Okay, so based on whatever was collected, they were categorized like this. Next, please. So modern museums can be personalia museums also. So what is personalia museums? Like we have Gandhi Museum. Okay, we have Nehru Museum. So it is about a person. It is about a personality. So that becomes a personalia museum. We also have Toilet Museum in India. It is in Delhi only. We have Rail Museum. So we have something about transport also. We have National Rail Museum. We have Transport Museum also in Gurgaon. And National Rail Museum is in Chanakipuri. We have Police Museum also. So these are the different categories that have come now. Okay, these can't be really put into the bracket of put inside the bracket of archaeology or natural history or like that. Okay, and we also have next, please, virtual museums, I believe. Next slide. Virtual museums. So now during this pandemic, I think virtual museums are the ones which are giving some solace to the eyes of museum goers because they are seeing museums virtually now. Museums are not open because of the pandemic. Some museums are, of course, opening up. National Museum has opened itself to few visitors. So virtual museums are important because there are many barriers. Like old age people cannot travel. There might be some people with special needs. They might not be able to walk. They might not be able to see. They might be visually impaired. But for visually impaired, we have replicas which can be touched and felt by them. So these are some of the education activities undertaken by museums. For example, the National Museum has a gallery called Anubhav Gallery. Anubhav Gallery, they have kept replicas of popular objects, popular exhibits. So the visually impaired can touch it because that's how they can feel. They can't see it. Whereas the other people with other kinds of needs, for example, some people may not be able to walk, so they can be at home and see the virtual museums. So National Museum and other museums like Sarajan and other museums, they have a good internet presence also. So they are good. They are wonderful websites. They are given much details, and we can have virtual tour of many museums. India is also doing it quickly to popularize collections digitally. We are doing that also. Next, please. So now we come to the next keyword, heritage. I will not take much time. I'm sure we are running out of time also. I'm sorry if I took a little longer. So heritage, UNESCO, we all know, has defined heritage, and it defines heritage of something which is of scientific value or artistic value or historical value or religious value. Any value found in any object will automatically become a heritage. And heritage has to be a little old. We have natural heritage also. We have cultural heritage also. Now, what is the difference? Natural is, for example, we have a mountain, we have a river. These are the natural heritage. It is not man-made. Whereas when we talk of cultural heritage, it has to be a sculpture, a painting, a coin, which has been made by human beings, made by man. So that is culture. So cultural heritage में आपका dance भी है, music भी है, cooking, culinary भी है. So different kinds of cultural heritage you can see. Natural heritage is also different kinds. And mixed में आपका क्या होता है? Mixed natural heritage, mixed heritage में the places where there is a culmination of both natural and cultural heritage. So there was a major convention of 1972, UN Convention of 1972, which says that it links together in a single document. The convention, it ka matlab, the convention. The convention links together in a single document the concepts of nature conservation and the preservation of cultural properties. The convention recognizes the way in which people interact with nature and the fundamental need to preserve the balance between the two. So, in order to satisfy our needs, we should not cut down the nature. At the same time, बस nature ही nature रहेगा तो लोग कहाँ रहेंगे? So there has to be a fine balance between these two, and nature and culture has to coexist peacefully. That is what we all intend. That is very important. So when we talk of heritage, history, अब हमारे जो भी heritage है. So we had our acts like Art Treasure and Antiquity and Art Treasure Act 1872 का है. We had Monuments and Protection Act 1904 का है. 1957 में भी आया. So we had many such laws which were enacted to preserve our monuments, our antiquities, and that is why if someone is illegally doing anything, illicit trade हो रहा है, तो they are all punishable. Because it is so important. Why heritage is important? Because whatever we are is because we have been given something by the past generations. We haven't made everything by ourselves. We are living on things which were made by our ancestors. So we are using our heritage. Without heritage, we are not existent. Heritage is very, very, very important. कोई भी प्रकार का heritage हो, वो music हो, वो culinary हो, वो medical हो, whatever it is. Culture encompasses everything. Culture में सब कुछ आ जाता है. So and natural, of course, naturally जो हमारे geographical locations इस तरह से हैं, जो geographical features हैं, हमारे plateaus हैं, mountains हैं, they're all very important. They're all very important. If they are not preserved, if they are not maintained, we will have severe climatic crisis. Climate weather changes बहुत गलत तरीके से होंगे. We will not be able to survive. Then nature will have its own law if we don't preserve it. So that is why heritage is important. Like museums, the role of museums in preserving heritage is also more important because see, अगर आप schools का role देखें, colleges का role देखें, we can't have more of informal activities. कुछ हद तक हो सकता है, but usually they are formal institutions. So we need to have some non-formal institutes of learning where it will complement the college school education and it will complement the general well-being of people, the general awareness of people about their own heritage, about their own culture. It is very important to know all this because whatever we are being shaped by our own ancestors' history and heritage. And if we lose that, we are losing our own identity. We as Indians, we have our own identity, and it is important to keep up that. And museums are the best place to preserve these things. Museums can exhibit it in a better way, and many people can go and see it. Yeah, and museums are very affordable also. Tickets are not that much in most of the museums. Most of the government museums तो बिल्कुल भी नहीं है, ticket बहुत कम है. So the people from the lower income group can also conveniently visit museums at least once a year. Any museum that will be a good knowledgeable exercise for them. Yeah, and for everyone of us, for students especially, museums are a must. Museum visits are a must. They complement your education, your college curriculum like anything. So you all have to do that. You have to visit museums whenever you can, whenever the situation gets better and whenever you can. Next, please. I think that will be the last slide. Next slide. So, heritage in museums. As I told you, I've just shared two pictures of the foreign museums. So, you can see transport museum sort of a thing where you have cars kept, small model of cars are kept. And then you have a museum on folk heritage. So, ये तिब्बत में है, I believe. तो ये भी folk heritage के लिए जो folk like instruments हैं, musical instruments हो सकते हैं, dresses हो सकते हैं. So they are exhibited. So these are the different kinds of collections that you see in museums. You can see musical instruments also. You can see arms and armor also. So many different things can be seen in the museums, and it is very important that we label them nicely in a short, sweet way that everyone understands. Scholar बनाते हैं चीजों को, लिखते हैं, रिसर्च करते हैं, but किसके लिए बना रहे हैं, किसके लिए लिख रहे हैं, किसकी समझ में आनी चाहिए, हम जैसे आम जनता के. So it has to be very, it has to be precise, short and sweet description of things, short and sweet background and introduction of each and every gallery of the museum. It will serve the purpose in inculcating a good feeling towards our own heritage. That is a must. Museums should be more interactive with the audience, and they should have a feedback system so that visitors give their own feedback, how things, what things can be improved in what ways, in which ways. That is very important because museums are for the people, by the people, of the people, just like government. So it is important that we value our museums in relation to our heritage, and we try to maximize the potential of museums by utilizing its resources more and more and in more meaningful ways. I think that's the last slide, Arushi. Next, please. I think that's a thank you slide. the museums and preserving heritage, as I have talked about this only. So museums have curators, museums have conservators, museums have a museum education department where there are educators. All these people come together and work under the curators. And then the exhibitions are curated. Exhibitions can be of different types. They can be mobile, they can be travel.
Kalyani ma'am, I need to request you something. Actually, we are exceeding the time now.
Yeah,
I
that's
think
it.
you
This is
should
the
wind
last.
up.
Arushi, you might be knowing this is the last slide. Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah.
ma'am.
So thank
Okay,
you.
ma'am.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much, ma'am. Let's proceed to question hour.
Actually, I'm interrupting Dr. Kalyani. Dr. Kalyani.
Yes, yes.
Yellow. Yeah. Actually, Dr. S.P. Singh, he has given us my message. Some emergencies there from his side. He just want to leave. So
Okay.
this was message from him. He has requested us to. Sorry.
Okay.
He has requested because for the
Okay.
question answer round.
Okay.
So this was
Okay.
the last. Oh, sorry. That was only from his side. He has to leave side.
Yeah, sure.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, Arushi, we can proceed for the question answer.
Ma'am, I think
Panchali, yeah.
Ma'am,
Principal ma'am is there?
yeah. So, before that, can I just take 2 minutes to thank Dr. Kalyani for her really remarkable and very compact and detailed presentation about the role of museums in the society. I mean, this is something that we have done in an entire semester, and I mean, it's really commendable that you have covered everything up in such a compact way, in such a small presentation. I'm sure the students have immensely benefited from your talk today. Thank you so much, Dr. Kalyani.
Thank you. Thank you.
Our respected principal, ma'am, Dr. Harpreet Kaur, has joined us, and she has taken out time from her very busy schedule. Thank you so much, ma'am. If we could request you to just address us for like 5 minutes or whatever time you can give us.
Right. And I thank all the speakers who have spared their time, Dr. Kalyani and Mr. S. and all others who have beautifully presented their views regarding the museums and how preservation of these artifacts and are important because these artifacts are for the posterity, and until and unless they are showcased and properly preserved, the coming generations will never be able to understand, and that viewpoint, that worldview will never be opened. And so that is why all the forts and many other museums have the curators, as Dr. Kalyani has expressed. And here I want to really mention my visit to Pakistan and my visit to the Red Fort, where I had a detailed with the curator there, and he was himself a keen enthusiast of music, and he had collected so many musical instruments at his own end also, all different type of musical instrument, which probably I had never seen also. And in the fort also, the Red Fort there, he explained us so many new things, which was really eye opener for me. For example, he says in the Red Fort at Lahore, he says that the fountains were there, as we all know, and these fountains, he says that one of the fountain was blocked, and when one fountain was blocked, then they tried to clean it, but then they tried to just dig it, and they tried to clean it, but they were not successful. Then again, they also brought some machines and to dig that small part where the blockage was there, just to clean it, but they were unable to do it. And then he said that what I had to do is I had to make use of some kind of a nuclear kind of substances, just to blast that particular part, and then that part was actually cleaned, and then they tried to again mend it. So what I mean to say is that even these sports, if you see, they were made with such technology that it is really marvelous, that it is unbelievable that in present times we were unable to even dig it, in by our own instruments. And then he says the technology to filter the water was so proper that the water went through three layers. There was a layer of sand, and then again layer of sand, and there was a pot at the end, and then that water used to come out of that fountain. So the technology there was so good that I mean, it is unbelievable. And so we have to preserve these kind of technologies and understand, and these kind of forts and these all the things in the museum we have to keep, because they are a marvel. They are masterpieces, and also an example of our technological advances at that time. And also that fort in when I went to Hyderabad and went to the fort there, and when I heard that I think is that also is famous for that. And when I put my ears in the walls, the sound was so clear that even in on telephone when we hear that the sound is not so clear. So that how that system worked, the entire system worked again. Again, it is again scientific advances that time we had. And even if we dig the part of Indus Valley and all those areas, and we find that how planned they were in their town planning, whether and that town planning is even missing in the present times. And we are seeing that how water is being collected after a downpour, whether it is Mumbai, whether it is Hyderabad, whether it is Delhi. In a small downpour, everything goes haywire. So even today we have unable to meet those demands or those simple things or simple needs of people. And so that is why if we understand them in depth and see all those things, I think it is really wonderful. Even if we go to Louvre, I think Louvre Museum in Paris, and where there's Leonardo da Vinci's Mona Lisa is there. Then I don't know, I was awestruck. I think I must have spent half an hour there in front of Mona Lisa, trying to gauge her smile and her look, that how she was looking. Even if I moved on left or right, everywhere we all know that we say that Mona Lisa is facing you and smiling at you. So so that is a real wonder. That kind of technologically, educationally, and scientifically advanced people of medieval and even modern times, ancient times were. So they have to be preserved for posterity. And this is what is, I think, all the historians and all the curators and all those who have read about museum and are placed there, and even the government, it is a duty of the government to preserve all these. And and this kind of awareness for the students is mainly of help, because students must understand that these things are to be preserved. Again, we are not to deface it, because we find defacing also at many places. So these things should not be done. And this enlightenment, this awakening is very important. And then only I think all things would be preserved, which is our national heritage and international as well. And so I want to thank the history department, the TIC, Dr. Daljit Kaur, her entire team who have just got together, and also the students who have participated, come forward, and they are even comparing in the events. I'm seeing Arushi is doing that. And there are many others also. And this is a platform we are providing to the students, so that they understand, and they get hands-on kind of experience in these kind of things. And that is why this webinar, which has been really successful, that all the teachers of history, I can miss many names. There is Navendu is there, and Sadbir is there, yeah, and Panchali is there, and also Shrimi is there. I might be missing few, but my due regard to them also. All have worked together, and they have put this platform, which is very enlightening and very interesting. Thank you very much.
Thank you so
Thank you,
much,
ma'am.
ma'am.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you so much, ma'am, for your words of encouragement. And we couldn't have possibly done it without your support and without your encouragement. Thank you so much for that. I'm sure Daljit ma'am will also like to share the same opinion, and I'm sure on behalf of the entire department, thank you so much for joining us once again. Also, you have very nicely and very immaculately actually conceptualized and summarized our entire 2-day seminar when you said that, it's the need of the hour that we need to recognize our heritage and we need to take it forward as a generation, as a society, as a community together, because this is who we are and this is how our coming generations will recognize itself. So thank you so much for that also. And now I would like to give the mic over to Arushi for the question answer session. Arushi, you have to unmute yourself.
Thank you, ma'am. So first question is for SP Singh, sir. The question is, sir, can you explain the difference between fresco and tempera painting? Sir, are you there?
Arushi, he is not here. Ma'am just said, I think he has left.
Oh, okay. So let me come to Kalyani ma'am then. Kalyani ma'am, this is for you. How do we define the term classical in an literary context?
So classical, even the definition of classical changes a lot. And what we term classical now will definitely be classical for the coming ages, but maybe some more things will be added in that bracket of classical. So classical, the word classical has the essence of originality. So anything, any movement, the originality of that kind of an art movement or any movement for that matter, whether it is any painting or music or anything, that is classic, the original essence of that particular style. If it is there, it will be classical. If there is a fusion, then it becomes slightly different. It either becomes modern or becomes contemporary. So it moves away from the concept of classical. That's what I understand.
Okay, thank you, ma'am. One more question for you.
Yeah.
Does the development of online information technologies contribute to the popularization of art and culture in society?
Definitely. As I also mentioned in my lecture, there are many people with many kinds of barriers. For example, there might be old people, there might be people with less time and not having time to travel much, or having some physical disability, who might not be able to go to museums. So these digital information platforms are very important. They serve these people very well because they can seek information as and when they can, whenever they have. Of course, the kind of barrier which will not be addressed by this platform is the technological barrier. So if there is this technological barrier where I am not having access to internet, then it will be difficult for such platforms to reach me or for me to reach those platforms. But once I have access to these platforms, I can very easily see many things world over, not only in India, not only in Delhi, but in many states of India and also abroad. What kind of exhibitions are they doing? How they are exhibited? What kind of materials they are using? What kind of technology they are using in their exhibitions and popularizing cultural activities, and how they, like in museums, what they also do is they sometimes pay the artists, like folk artists, and the museum arranges a session of folk music. Many people can come, or folk drama, something like that. So this means the museums are also able to give something to the folk people, folk artists, or who may not be otherwise finding some work. And it is also a way and means of communicating our folk traditions to the present audience. So it's a very nice way of doing things. So these things, if they are recorded and put on the digital media, I think so many people can access it, can see it and enjoy it and learn so much about our own culture, which we are not fully aware of. All of us know only this much of our culture. Only this much. It is just the tip of an iceberg. So we need to develop a sense of curiosity. And this can be developed by museums. Museums have a major role in developing curiosity in people's minds. If they can mount beautiful exhibitions with very simple captions that everyone can understand, not using those scholarly languages or scholarly or too much of what do you say, social media, not social media exactly, too much of, touch screens and all. Unfortunately, fortunately or unfortunately, we in India have people who are little, what do I say, little apprehensive to use such touch screens. Not everyone is comfortable doing that. So if we try to integrate technology wherever we want to, we should not do like that. Wherever a simple label, handwritten label is fine. Let's find peace with that. No, why to integrate technology which will intimidate some people who are, let's say, who are coming from rural areas, who are really intimidated by the way of touching it. Oh, kuch toot jayega, main kuch chhu loon, kuch kharab ho jayega. So we can use simple paper and pen and do so many wonderful things. So we have to make things easy for everyone, for every kind of people, for people from every strata of our society. That is what I believe. So these platforms are of course very good. They might not be able to engage rural audience that much, but now आपको पता है rural areas में भी internet का बोलबाला है हमारे यहाँ पे, तो कई लोग इसको देख रहे हैं, तो हमें और अपने museums को और अच्छे से अपने आप को promote करना है, market करना है. That's what I say.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you so much.
Welcome.
These were the questions. Thank you so
Okay.
much, ma'am.
Yeah.
Over to
welcome.
Panchali, ma'am.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you, Arushi. Thank you, Kalyani ma'am.
Thank you.
I would now request Sanskrit and Ananya, our students, to do the presentation for the two sessions that have happened.
Good afternoon, everyone. The Department of History of Mata Sundari College for Women conducted a 2-day international webinar on histories and heritage, a journey through archives, museums, and arts on 27th and 28th November 2020 under the convenership of Dr. Daljit Kaur. In the inaugural session on 27 November 2020, Dr. Harpreet Kaur, Principal Mata Sundari College for Women, gave the welcome address highlighting the importance of conserving our heritage and threats and challenges of protecting them for posterity. Dr. Daljit Kaur, teacher in charge, Department of History, presented the concept note. Keynote address was given by Dr. Meena Gautam, former director of National Mission of Monuments and Antiquities. She explained what heritage meant and the different types of heritage. She successfully established the relation of heritage with tourism, culture, and history. She briefed us about the National Manuscripts Mission. Detailed information through various facts and figures was given about the National Mission on Monuments and Antiquities, along with its legal framework and the milestones achieved. The first technical session on the theme Archives and Museums began at 3:15 p.m. Dr. Nina Jans, postdoctoral research associate at Luxembourg Center for Contemporary and Digital History, spoke on making of archives and research prospects. Dr. Jans widened the knowledge base by defining the cultural heritage as done by the European Union. The cultural platform Europeana and its purpose was explained. Rules and regulations about the access and use of archival collections were shared for both the citizens and foreigners of the European Union. We got to know the role of an archivist, a researcher, and approaches towards a historical document. She wonderfully bridged the gap between an archivist and a historian by painting the former as builder of a road and the latter as a driver on that road. Dr. Jains elaborated about Arulsen, a special archive on victims and survivors of the Nazi persecution. Not just she displayed the past and present scenario in front of us, but she also put forward the future perspectives for archives and researches. The first session was concluded by portraying a strong cooperation between cultural heritage and research, which can be strengthened by the crowdsourcing and open archive projects. At 4:15 p.m., the second speaker, Dr. Forget Chaturira Zambuka, spoke on conservation of museum and archival heritage. She is a postdoctoral fellow at Paris Sorbonne University, Abu Dhabi. She started with specific standards for conservation of museums. A very detailed explanation was given on archival heritage conservation, along with mentioning the ancient techniques. Step-by-step process of conservation was narrated in a student-friendly way. She emphasized on the archives and modern archival thinking with its root in the French Revolution. The concept of preventive conservation for reducing damage and deterioration to museum collections by improving their environment was put forward. Various measures such as controlling temperature, emergency preparedness, etc. were detailed. Different types of materials and the response to the immediate environment were also put forward. She brought attention to multiple agents of deterioration to archives in the form of physical, biological, and chemical disasters. In her concluding remark by her was more of a sense of responsibility she inculcated within the listeners for being a conservator at all points of life. The technical session was followed by an interactive session where the speakers answered all the queries of the participants.
Thank you, Ananya. If I can call Sanskriti on now. Sanskriti, are you there?
Panchali, I can't see her name, Sanskriti. I think she has joined with some other name. She have to tell me, otherwise
She
can't.
is 6 SANS. She is 6
Okay.
SANS.
Okay, okay.
Sanskriti, unmute yourself.
Yeah, she's a co-host now. I think she can do it.
She's there. She's there.
Sanskriti, please unmute yourself.
She will join. She will join. All the students, all the participants are requested to fill the feedback form. It's in your chat box. Sanskriti will join. Anandita? Anandita, are you there? Hello? Anandita, are you there?
Ananya, if you could contact Sanskriti over the phone.
Yes, ma'am. Sure, ma'am.
Yeah, Sanskriti, we can see you. You have to unmute yourself. Okay. Arushi, if you are a co-host, please unmute Sanskriti.
Panchali, she can only she can unmute herself.
Okay.
Yes.
Sanskriti, it seems only you can do
I
it
think
yourself.
there is something technical glitch. I think she is unable to find the
Key. Yeah.
If Anandita can do, Anandita, are you there, beta? Anandita, are you there?
Just trying to do it.
Hello.
Yes.
Yeah, Anandita, you can start, beta. Anandita.
Okay, ma'am. Just
you can
ma'am,
start.
give me a minute. Just give me a minute, ma'am.
Yeah, sure. No problem. This is all technical things when we are online.
Yes, ma'am.
These
Actually,
things
I
are normal.
hear you also. That's how
Yeah.
lost.
It's okay. Yeah. It's okay. It's okay. You just take a second.
Ma'am, the summary, right?
Yeah. For today's session.
Yes.
No? Yeah.
In the meantime,
You
if I
can
can ask and request all the participants to please fill the form that has been sent to you, the feedback form that is essential for you getting the participation certificate that will be mailed to you on the email ID provided by you in the feedback form. Thank you.
Okay, ma'am. Then I'll start.
Yeah, Nandita. Yeah, sure. You may start.
The second session of a two-day international seminar on the topic Histories and Heritage, Journey Through Archives, Museums and Arts began at 10:09 a.m. on the theme Heritage and Conservation. The webinar was moderated by Ms. Panchali Devi, Assistant Professor, Department of History, under the convenership of Dr. Daljit Kaur, the teacher in charge, Department of History, Mata Sundari College. The first speaker for today's technical session was Dr. S.P. Singh, former Director, Conservation National Museum, and presently Chairman, Kasturba Gandhi National Museum and Mahadev Desai Library. This is a mere glimpse into his long and illustrious career. He emphasized on the importance of the people and their persistent contribution working in the field of conservation. He pointed out how heritage is an indispensable part of our lives. He discussed with us in length about the issue of the degradation of the Taj Mahal. He talked about the experiences he had as the head of the pollution department and discussed the marble cancer that had happened in Taj Mahal. He gave us insight about pollution, how pollution has affected the most beautiful monument of the world, and explained how he worked on the process of mitigating the issue of Taj Mahal through scientific knowledge, methods, and emphasized that the knowledge of science plays an important role in our lives. He also pointed out the geographical aspect which has affected the degradation of the monument. In speaking about pollution, he continued in discussing the high pollution levels of the national capital, New Delhi, and how it has been impacting the different forts and monuments of Delhi. He spoke out about how the monuments are being neglected and not taken care of, and the challenges faced by the different institutions. He further elaborated the guideline of the preservation and use of climate control to preserve the manuscripts, particularly the Constitution of India, and many other such important manuscripts. He explained how neglect had caused the destruction more than any other issue. He elaborated how different programs should be organized to spread the knowledge and the love for heritage. A detailed presentation was presented on frescoes, conservation of Dakshini Dyodhi in the entrance of the main shrine of Sri Golden Temple, Amritsar. Also pointed out the temperature and wind issues and how it affects the working of the conservator. He highlighted the importance of teamwork and ethics of conservation and how it plays the most important role in the life of a conservator and focused on preventive conservation. The methods of degradation were explained and the challenges faced by the conservators in India. In our country, the love can be molded only by the original heritage, and the legacy of preservation should be passed on. He gave us detailed insights about the world of conservation and encouraged us to take action towards this. The second session was conducted by the speaker of the day, Dr. V. Kalyani, Assistant Registrar, National Museum Institute, New Delhi. She spoke out about how museums and heritage are two parts of the same coin and are interlinked with each other. The definition of a museum is well presented before us through a detailed presentation and how it became an institution reserved only for the elite class to the institution for all in common. She emphasized the role played by the museum in imparting knowledge about heritage and conservation and how one learns so many things in one non-formal way. Different terms related to museums were explained, the importance of documentation of the object was pointed out, and she spoke about the role of Renaissance, followed by the period of Enlightenment, which brought a difference in the field of knowledge and research and led to the coming up of the development of museums. Categorization of museums was highlighted. She discussed how natural history dominated the collection of the museums and later on the archaeological history. She laid focus on how the activity of museum visiting should be given importance in our country. She elaborated on how the display in the museums evolved from the cabinet of curiosity to categorical display. In a very easy way, the evolution of museums in different continents was present along with the museum movements in different, with special reference to the throwing movement in India. We were given insights about the establishment of different museums in India, and the building of movements or museums around the archaeological site makes more sense than carrying the object to another place and placing it was pointed out. The coming up of the National Museum of India was focused upon and how the study of museums gain importance in our country in different colleges and universities, and the existence of virtual museums, especially now with the upcoming recent COVID, and the discussion of heritage museums was also held. She discussed the need for institutions that will complement schools and colleges for the education on heritage and its conservation. Museums are of the people, by the people, and for the people, and we should all value them, is what what she tried to indicate to us throughout her session. Uh, Personally, I felt our knowledge was enriched when it comes to heritage and conservation in India. While we have all read the paper on heritage and conservation, this was an additional insight to our knowledge beyond the books and from coming from people who have worked in this field. And I felt that the importance of the session is in the fact that we need to consider heritage, even the small insights of how the Delhi pollution, we constantly talk about the health of human beings, but what has been overpassed is uh, the how the monuments and the forts are degrading. So I think, yeah, it was a very detailed and knowledge enriching session for all of us. Thank you.
Thank you, Anandita. Thank you for summarizing the session, today's session so beautifully. Also, Ananya, thank you so much. Now, if I can request my colleague, Dr. Navendu Shekhar, to please address the vote of thanks to the gathering.
Thank you, Panchali. Good afternoon, everyone. Our most valued guest, Principal Madam, faculty members, members of non-teaching staff, and dear students. It is my privilege to have been asked to propose vote of thanks after a 2-day-long international webinar on the very relevant theme titled Histories and Heritage, Journey Through Archives, Museums and Arts. I, Navendu Shekhar, on behalf of Department of History, Mata Sundari College, University of Delhi, and on my own behalf, extend a very hearty vote of thanks to all speakers for sharing with us your findings and opinions. A big thank you to Dr. Meena Gautam for her keynote address. Madam, we must confess that your address set the tone and tenor of the webinar. I must mention our deep sense of appreciation for Dr. Nina and Dr. Rumbi for covering various aspects of research projects and conservation of museum and archival heritage. Further, we are grateful to Dr. S.P. Singh for demonstrating his few conservation works done at Harminder Sahib and Taj Mahal and the efforts that he has put in safeguarding our heritage from the emerging threats of pollution and other related issues. I may like to express our sincere thanks to Dr. V. Kalyani for giving an insight into linkages between museum and heritage. She highlighted the role played by museums in imparting knowledge and about conservation of heritage. We would also like to acknowledge the gratitude to our principal, Madam Professor Harpreet Kaur, for guiding us in making this webinar possible. Madam, we are all inspired by your great words and dynamic leadership. I must confess that an event like this is not possible overnight. The wheels start rolling weeks ago. We have been fortunate enough to be backed by a team of very motivated and dedicated colleagues at the department. I would like to convey my sincere thanks to our convener of this international webinar, TIC, Teacher in Charge, Dr. Lajit Kaur, senior faculty at the department, Madam Sabnam Suri, Dr. Simi Kapoor Mehta, Dr. Rupali Valla Mathur, and Divya Surana. I also express my gratitude to my colleague Ms. Panchali and Mr. Satvir Singh for our department for moderating 2 days webinar. Thanks are also due to our alumni, Ms. Priyanka Kaushik and Ms. Arusi Mehra for helping us in organizing this webinar. I would like to appreciate the effort of Sanskriti and Ananya. Sanskriti was absent. In her absence, Anandita presented. So Anandita and Ananya for presenting the report of this webinar. They were the rapporteur for this 2 days international webinar. I also like to take this opportunity to thank Sangeeta ji for technical support which we have received during our webinar. Lastly, I'll fail in my duty if I don't mention the support we received from our students. Dear students, this webinar would not have been possible without your active support and participation. So thank you so much. Over to you, Panchali.
Thank you so much, Navendu. It was a really heartfelt gratitude that you have expressed towards everyone, and you have covered everyone in your vote of thanks. Thank you so much for that. Daljit ma'am, if you would like to conclude the webinar, it was a very successful event. Everybody as the kind of messages that we are receiving in the chat box, the students have really benefited from this. So I also personally thank you for conducting and organizing such an eventful webinar. And please address the students and all of us with a few words.
Thank you, Panchali. Thank you, Panchali. I think I am overwhelmed. I don't have any words to say that much. Am I visible or audible? I'm not, Panchali.
Yes, ma'am, you are visible and audible.
Audible and visible. Okay, fine. So first of all, I would like to say I am speechless, overwhelmed with my team's support, and above all, my dear principal. I always call her my dear principal, though I know she's a principal there, but she's very dear to me and to my colleagues and faculty members and to my dear students. But yes, from bottom of my heart, again, I don't have any words. But yes, it was a hard work of my team and my students. Ma'am, Dr. Kalyani, I would like to say, yes, our students were doing this. Miss Panchali, she's taking all these paper. My faculty members, other members, Dr. Simi, and they are also taking these papers. But it was all because of them. But it was an additional bonus knowledge because going through all those museums, it was really, it was great for us. And for myself personally, I don't know much about these things. So I've got बहुत कुछ मिला मुझे, and I hope everybody, they must have. And Mr. Singh was also there. He was Dr. Nina Zanz, Rumbi, Minaji. So once again, I'm overwhelmed, speechless. These 2 days webinar, it has been great for us, for our students. And once again, thanks all for joining us. Ma'am, thanks again. You have taken your precious time. You have, आपने मुझे कहा कि आप join करेंगे, and you have joined, and you have taken my words. Thanks again all for joining us. Thanks, Panchali. Thanks, my alumni students, my dear students are there. So again, thanks to them. मैम, नाम बहुत लोग हैं मेरे साथ इस समय. नाम बेटा मैं सबके नहीं ले पाऊंगी. But loads and love and blessings to you. Stay connected with us. And my technical team. Sangeeta ji, thanks a lot to you. Thanks again. Thanks again.
Thank you, ma'am. Okay.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you.
So I think आप अपना वो feedback form जरूर भरिए. Please fill that feedback form, and then you'll be getting that e-certificates to your email IDs.